I caught the supreme strike of the world's most sacred sect with one bare hand, and with a single counterattack, I sliced their ancient formation clean in half. Dozens of legendary grandmasters dropped to the floor beaten and humiliated, while their supreme patriarch trembled in pure horror at the ruin of his clan. I just smiled and demanded to drain every drop of chi from the fallen swordsman, bringing the desperate leader to his knees, begging for the survival of his sect. I took their greatest sacred treasure as payment and declared the debt fully settled. But all this insane chaos started when a massive army was marching through the valley. A massive army marches right through the valley carrying their banners high, armored soldiers gripping their spears as they push forward in tight formation, while the entire legion takes their position in front of a colossal fortress. Sitting right at the top of the platform, an imposing man overlooks the whole scene, admiring his vast army while commenting on just how glorious it looks, and his loyal followers immediately roar out, swearing absolute allegiance to him. A hooded subordinate steps up, claiming the Central Plains are definitely gonna fall, and the infamous heavenly demon Weijishan casually nods in agreement, which prompts the follower to ask for permission to speak his mind. Pointing down at the troops, the subordinate asks about all the brand new gear. Since every single soldier is geared up in pristine armor and gleaming weapons, and knowing their treasury was bone dry, he wonders where all that cash even came from. Sipping his tea without a care in the world, the leader replies that someone loaned them everything, leaving the guy completely stunned and barely able to process what he just heard. The supreme leader repeats himself, saying some dude just handed over the funds to the cult, which makes the subordinate think it is pure madness for anyone to actually trust them. Trying to find some logical explanation behind the whole thing, the man clasps his hands with respect as a sudden thought hits him, figuring the Central Plains banks must have folded out of pure terror, and he excitedly praises the genius plan of bagging all that gold without shedding a single drop of blood. But the cult master just looks confused, not getting why anyone would just pay up like that. Getting annoyed and making it clear he is not some common thug extorting folks, before reaching into his robes to dig around for the official receipt, pulling out a document and revealing that all he had to do was leave his fingerprint. According to him, this guy called Manager Kim was super polite throughout the entire deal, but seeing that paper makes the subordinate feel uneasy about someone trusting them over a single sheet. Right in the contract, there is a special clause highlighted in bright red, and taking a closer look, the follower widens his eyes in absolute shock, seeing that their internal energy will be seized if the debt is not paid. And to make matters worse, the deadline to settle everything expires this very day. Faced with such absurdity, the subordinate ends up completely speechless, but then laughs off the audacity, claiming it has got to be just a meaningless formality, since the deadline running out today does not change a single thing for them anyway. Weiji-chun praises the kid for his sharp thinking, saying he will just pay it back after he conquers everything, while the follower hypes up the unmatched might of the heavenly demon once again, and loud laughter echoes out as the leader enjoys the whole chat. Drawing his blade, the demonic master gets ready to lead the massive invasion, raising his sword straight toward the sky with overwhelming dominance, and proudly declaring before everyone that he stands as the representative of the heavens. Dropping the command, he orders his army to pillage everything and claim the central lands, roaring out at his warriors to initiate the immediate advance, which makes the battle-ready captains offer a deep martial salute, shouting in unison as they swear to carry out every single order. In a split second, the vanguard leaps off the fortress wall, rushing toward the battlefield, and ferocious war cries rip through the heavily armed legion, as the massive sea of soldiers surges across the plains to begin the grand march. Heavy footsteps kick up massive clouds of dust as the army moves out, tearing through the mountain ranges without stopping for a second, while their supreme master watches them depart, standing all by himself up high. Totally satisfied with the view, he lets out a smug little smirk, heading back to his seat to kick back and relax, taking another chill sip from his warm cup of tea, and breathing in deep as he enjoys the peaceful silence. Looking out over the horizon, he thinks to himself that the good life has finally begun, until a sudden greeting pops up right behind him, making him spit his tea everywhere. And freaking out, the cult leader spins around to find two strangers chilling inside his headquarters. The mysterious man flashes a super friendly and calm smile, while the bespectacled young woman beside him coldly analyzes the situation, and both uninvited guests look at the terrifying master without flinching at all. Weiji-chun instantly wonders if this is the guy who lent him all that cash, his eyes going wide the moment he realizes something deeply unsettling, because not even his razor-sharp senses were able to detect them sneaking up on him. And standing before the duo, the heavenly demon immediately raises his guard, After all, our guy was known to hear a single leaf dropping across 100,000 mountains, but offering a polite greeting. The stranger introduces himself as Manager Kim from the Continental Bank, smiling warmly while asking if he still remembers their little loan agreement. That polite attitude only makes the martial master even more suspicious, with his gut screaming that this guy is radiating immense danger, as a heavy, suffocating pressure starts taking over the whole room. Staring right at the visitor, the leader demands to know who he actually is, but reaching into his sleeve, the young man simply repeats that he is just Manager Kim, pulling out an official ledger of financial records right then and there. In the kindest voice, the manager reminds him that the debt expires this exact day, while the girl adjusts her glasses, getting ready to crunch the numbers, holding an abacus in hand and opening the ledger to calculate the exact sum. Her swift fingers flick the wooden beads, calculating the bill in a flash, and one sharp click wraps up the calculation of the accumulated interest. Double-checking the records, the young woman reads out the final total, leaning in to whisper the grand sum straight into her boss's ear. Looking cheerful, Manager Kim states the principal was 6,000 plus another 7,000 in interest, leaving Weiji-chan completely shell-shocked at the total of 13,000 yen, angrily snapping back that the interest is literally bigger than the loan itself. The debt collector scoffs, asking if he actually expected a loan shark to be cheap, adding that anyone looking for low interest rates should have gone to a regular bank, especially since the leader has terrible credit and runs a notorious criminal syndicate. Enraged, the master yells back that he commands the supreme sacred cult, but the collector mocks him, saying that to the rest of the world they are just bandits, and because they are a high-risk faction, 0 regular banks would ever touch them. Left with no comeback, the Grand Master secretly admits that the guy is right, since any standard bank caught doing business with them would get wiped out by the righteous faction. Pointing directly at the contract, the assistant shows the signed agreement, explaining that the extreme risk penalty was clearly stated in Article 4. Gritting his teeth, the martial artist struggles to hold back his boiling rage, letting out a deep sigh as he tries to figure out his next move, finally coming clean and admitting he does not have the funds right now. Raising his arm, he points toward the distant horizon, leading both visitors to glance at the vast scenery the man is showing off. As Weiji-chan asks if they can see all those rich, fertile lands waiting ahead, Manager Kim replies that he sees them just fine, jokingly making fun of the heavy mist, while the confident leader promises to loot the entire Murim Alliance and pay off everything with plenty to spare. Weiji-chan asks for just a 1-month extension, swearing to cover every single bit of interest, offering to pay double or even triple as he swears on his honor as the heavenly demon. An insane deal that would boost the bank's profits through the roof after the invasion. But the manager just lets out a mocking laugh at that desperate proposal, flashing a wide grin while warning him that the bank never invests in empty future promises, and adding that his chances of winning this war are less than 5% anyway. Steady footsteps echo as the young collector casually walks across the cracked stone floor, flat out rejecting the offer and declaring that the grace period has officially expired. His friendly look instantly turns into a dark and terrifying glare, glowing red eyes flashing as he informs the client that he will have to pay with his own body. Weiji-chan freezes in pure disbelief at the sheer audacity of this young man, furious that anyone would have the guts to demand the body of the supreme heavenly demon. A violent gale suddenly kicks up, violently rattling the banners atop the fortress, while the assistant grips her hair against the sudden gust, her eyes widening in terror as she feels the crushing pressure flooding the atmosphere. Dark clouds blot out the sky as a monstrous power begins to awaken, and facing that terrifying aura, the girl can barely contain her shock, while massive cracks tear through the ground right beneath the enraged master's boots. Weiji-chan unleashes the full might of his demonic energy, wrapping it around his entire frame, as a pitch-black aura detonates all around the leader, reaffirming his absolute dominance. Disgusted, he refuses to take threats from a mere mortal loan shark, warning the intruder that he was just gonna hand over gold, but now he has to erase him from existence. Unsheathing his sword and packing a colossal amount of destructive energy right into the steel. Seeing that happen, Manager Kim rushes forward, whining in total despair, screaming with his hands on his head as he completely panics over the sight, making Weiji-chan scoff, thinking the guy finally realized who he is messing with, and warning that it is way too late even if the visitor begs for his life right now. But the collector is actually crying over the wasted energy that already belongs to the bank as collateral, which paints a look of pure confusion all over the great leader's face. Losing his mind, the manager yells that nobody is allowed to damage the bank's collateral without permission, and tightening his grip on the hilt, the cult master completely snaps, charging straight in with everything he's got while calling the kid a complete lunatic. A devastating slash crashes down with full power, but the manager casually dodges the lethal swing. Shockwaves ripping through the stone floor and carving a massive crater into the fortress foundation. Laughing in pure rage, the demonic leader roars at his opponent to get torn to pieces, immediately unleashing his secret shadow/technique with cataclysmic force, sending a massive purple beam surging forward to light up the whole area as it barrels toward the young man. But without breaking a sweat, our MC simply swats the deadly blast away with his bare hand, smiling with pure satisfaction after deflecting the fatal strike, while the redirected blast shoots straight up, tearing the skies apart toward the horizon. Far in the distance, an entire mountain peak gets sliced clean in half by the sheer force of the blow, leaving the assistant standing there with her jaw dropped at what she just witnessed, because to her it feels impossible for a simple slap to split an entire mountain range. Wei Jiqian lets out a low chuckle, finally recognizing the hidden skill of his opponent, admitting the guy was not just running his mouth and actually packs real talent, though he warns that cheap parlor tricks will only make the kid's life a lot shorter. Purple flames ignite around his blade once again as the master powers up, raising his martial aura to condense an even greater amount of raw energy, and glaring with pure rage, he dares the collector to try blocking his next attack. But out of nowhere, Manager Kim blinks right next to the master, tapping his shoulder and calling him a chatterbox. And Wei Jiqian completely freezes up, totally shocked by the insane speed of his foe. Nobody across the entire Central Plains would ever believe something so ridiculous. And looking down, the legendary warrior notices the young man's palm pressed directly against his abdomen, realizing that the supreme heavenly demon just had his core breached by a total stranger. Breaking out in a cold sweat, the Grandmaster cannot comprehend how he lost track of the guy's movements, while the friendly manager cheerfully announces that the repossession process is officially starting, pressing his palm against the energy center and politely warning him that this might sting a little bit. A sharp, unbearable pain strikes the warrior, nearly making his eyeballs pop out of his skull, as vortexes of brilliant golden light erupt, siphoning every drop of life force straight out of his body. Wei Jiqian screams out in pure agony, feeling his internal organs getting completely crushed, desperately recognizing this as the legendary technique of total energy absorption, while golden ripples illuminate the entire sky as the Grandmaster's power rapidly drains away. The manager casually tells the client to relax his body so he does not suffer a spiritual breakdown, while the enraged leader literally weeps with fury over losing all the strength he spent his life building up. Showing some extra hospitality, the debt collector says he is going to provide a full service package, promising to purge all the accumulated spiritual impurities resting inside his body as well. Tears of pure agony stream down as the fallen master screams without any power left to resist, his desperate cries echoing across the open valley for miles, until his trembling knees slam right into the stone floor in complete defeat. Fully drained, the demonic leader stays on his knees with zero energy left inside him, gasping for breath and barely able to keep his eyes open after getting completely folded. Bowing with the utmost manners, the collector thanks him and officially wraps up the job, as he and his partner Mac Raiwa formally introduce themselves as staff from the Continental Bank. Handing over a business card, the manager kindly asks him to do business with them again sometime, while Wei Jiqian grips the paper with shaking hands and a totally shattered gaze, his weak voice barely managing to mutter a few curses at the ruthless duo, before he passes out and collapses face first onto the floor from sheer exhaustion. The little business card drifts through the air, landing softly beside his unconscious body, with the name Manager Kim from the Continental Bank boldly written right on the front. A few days later, our scene shifts over to a bustling restaurant in town, specifically the famous guest pavilion located right in the heart of Sichuan province, where massive plates of food and jars of liquor pack every single table. Among the noisy crowd, several martial artists are gossiping about recent events, with one guy holding his bowl and asking if everyone heard the wild rumor about the demonic cult, making the other companions lean in, wanting to get the full scoop on what happened. The man reveals that the enemy army has been camping at the border for 3 whole days without moving, but another warrior scoffs, saying the great Wei Jiqian would never back down out of fear. After all, years ago, the demonic master's terrifying reputation haunted the entire region, back when he single-handedly took down over 100 masters from the righteous sects, which leads people to believe this pause is either a master trap or the demon's divine ascension. The cult's advance seemed completely unstoppable, ready to swallow the entire Central Plains whole, and despite none of the official forces stepping up to block them, the Legion just froze out of nowhere. Someone throws out the idea that the leader might have suffered a massive chi deviation, but his friend just laughs it off, claiming that is straight up impossible for a beast like him. Across the entire tavern, everyone keeps making up wild theories to explain the sudden halt, until a half-drunk dude resting his chin on his hand decides to chime in, suggesting the whole army probably stopped just because they ran completely out of travel cash. A brief silence washes over the hall after everyone hears such a ridiculous take, before roaring laughter explodes everywhere as they mock the idea of the supreme cult going broke. But unfazed, the drunk man casually notes that going broke hurts even the strongest monsters out there. While the customers keep wheezing at the thought of a grand army halting over pocket change, listening to the chatter from a corner table, our manager just lets out a quiet smirk, thinking that the drunk guy actually has some insanely sharp intuition, while Mak Raiwa nods along from across the table, agreeing with her partner's thoughts. To her, nobody in this world can truly escape the overwhelming power of money. Right as the waiter walks up handing over the menu and hyping up their fresh ingredients. Super excited, the girl brings up his promise of a grand feast after their exhausting journey, but the manager gives her a stern look, calling her out with a scolding tone, reminding her that the bank's expense account is not meant to fund personal luxuries. And since their last collection only netted raw internal energy, their financial balance is still deep in the red. Wasting zero time, the cheap boss orders 2 bowls of the absolute cheapest noodles on the menu, and within moments, the steaming plain dishes are placed down in front of them. Annoyed by his penny pinching, she complains while the guy claims that saving money is good for the soul, and slurping down her portion, she asks where their next target on the list is hiding out. The manager quickly corrects his assistant, stating that they should always be referred to as clients, a sneaky grin spreading across his face as he prepares to drop their next destination, looking straight at the girl and announcing that their next stop is none other than Manhwa. Night falls over the towering peaks of the famous Shaanxi province, with glowing lanterns lighting up the lively village nestled right beneath the sect, while silent footsteps make their way toward an isolated shack hidden in the dark. Reaching the spot, Manager Kim states that they have finally arrived at the correct address, pointing at the rundown hut and jokingly calling it their brand new branch office. Suddenly, 2 armed goons pop out at the entrance, barking at the duo to freeze right there, glaring with suspicious eyes as they warn them that trespassing is strictly forbidden, which makes the assistant think it is super weird to find heavy security guarding an old shack, curiously wondering what kind of shady business is actually running inside this hideout. Politely, our MC asks for entry, but the thugs demand an official entry token, and smiling with pure chill, he replies that he does not carry any pass like that, which pisses off one of the guards, who drops a menacing scowl at the sheer disrespect. Drawing his sword, the guard gets ready to kick the intruders out by force, telling them both to turn around right now before cold steel gets involved. But Manager Kim just lets out a tired sigh at the cheap provocation, stepping forward and asking if they even realize what they are doing right now. With a sharp glare, the young collector decides to teach these bouncers a quick lesson, as the enemy leaps into the air, yelling that nobody gets away from this place alive. The sword crashes down at blazing speed, slicing clean through the darkness. But without breaking a sweat, our guy casually raises a single hand at the perfect timing, releasing a soft burst of wind that deflects the strike and makes the thug lose his balance completely. Totally shocked by the parry, the guard cannot even fathom how his attack got stopped, while the collector's fingers move with pinpoint accuracy, striking the man's vital pressure points. In the blink of an eye, the first guard collapses unconscious onto the stone ground, and seeing his buddy get folded instantly, the second bouncer goes into a full panic, desperately charging forward with his blade held high in a frantic attempt to land a hit, unleashing his Venom Fang flash technique at top speed. But Manager Kim pinches the tip of the incoming sword with just 2 fingers and a calm smile, applying a tiny bit of pressure that shatters the steel into pieces right in front of the guy, leaving the thug paralyzed in absolute terror as he stares at his broken weapon. Just like that, the young man flashes right behind the terrified guard's back, landing surgical strikes of raw chi directly into his spine, and crying out in pain, the goon feels all his neural pathways getting completely shut down. With 0 strength left to stand, the final guard drops face first into the dirt, while Mak Raiwa watches from behind, getting lost in thought over her boss's ridiculous skill. Because even after witnessing high-tier techniques in her renowned family, she cannot recognize his martial arts. His movements do not resemble anything from the traditional orthodox sects, nor do they look like the dark arts used by the continent's evil factions, reminding her of how casually he barged straight into the demonic cult without batting an eye. An elite monster of this caliber should never be a complete nobody in the martial world, and she considers asking about the true identity hiding behind that friendly manager persona, staring at his back while trying to unravel the massive mystery surrounding him. before quickly brushing the thought aside, knowing he would definitely just dodge the question anyway. After all, the man has never dropped a single hint about his past since day one. While on the ground, the injured guard just groans in agony while clutching his arm, the sheer pain shutting down any possible retaliation from the fallen Dugs. Stepping forward with complete composure, the debt-collecting duo walks past the downed guards, as the manager explains that he only paralyzed them to keep innocent folks safe, casually asking his assistant to drag the bodies over against the wall, which makes the girl grumble under her breath about her lazy boss as she hauls them across the floor. Manager Kim pushes the wooden doors open and steps inside the abandoned shack, scanning the quiet interior to search for a hidden entryway, until his eyes lock onto a wooden staircase leading straight down into the basement. Dark steps descend into a subterranean hall hidden right beneath the floorboards, and our MC walks down smoothly, catching muffled noises echoing from down below, with the rowdy chatter and shouting getting louder and louder with every step. A satisfied smile spreads across his face as his suspicions are instantly confirmed, arriving at the underground den to find a massive illegal gambling hall in full swing. Rows of tables packed with gamblers and piles of shiny coins fill the brightly lit room, rowdy men betting their life savings while slamming dice cups against the wooden tables, and angry screams ringing out after every single lost round. Showing up right behind him, Manhwa joins the manager at the entrance, with the boss teasing her for being slow while she snaps back about doing all the heavy lifting. And scanning the chaos, the young woman asks if this underground casino is really their target. Giving a quick nod, the collector confirms they definitely hit the right spot, while the assistant pinches her nose at the rank smell as the manager enjoys the whole vibe. Suddenly, an explosion of cheers grabs everyone's attention across the hall, with the surrounding crowd hyping up some young guy who just won 3 rounds in a row. And pointing right to the mob, our manager finally spots their newest client. A fancy-dressed young man holds his gaming tiles with pure swagger, confidently taking a sip of his drink while surrounded by hyped-up onlookers at the table, while a distinct plum blossom crest stands out proudly on his sleeve, making Manhwa's eyes go wide as she recognizes the grand sex emblem. Shocked to her core, she wonders if their current debtor is actually a Manhwa disciple. But the manager smirks, reminding his assistant how she is supposed to address the guy, emphasizing once again that to their bank, everyone gets treated strictly as a client. The young man at the table is Chong Seng, the rising star and junior Plum Blossom Swordmaster, and pulling out a bounty flyer with his sketch, the collector looks over his file, dryly commenting that the talented swordsman happens to be completely trash at gambling. The assistant grabs the file, rolling her eyes at her boss's usual jokes, checking the records and asking if the insane loss streak on his sheet is actually accurate, especially since looking over the table, the guy looks like he is on a winning streak, though the cold sweat dripping down the swordsman's face reveals his luck is hanging by a thread. Over at the gambling table, the young swordsman matches the bet and raises by 10 yonggang, confidently ordering his opponent to reveal his tiles right away, and the guy flips his hand, slamming the wooden pieces down onto the felt. Cheering like crazy, the other disciples celebrate their fellow junior's massive win, while Chuonjong laughs out loud as he drags a fat pile of shiny coins straight toward himself. Watching from a distance, Manhwa looks genuinely surprised by another victory from the kid, noting that his posture looks super stiff and wondering if it is all just pure beginner's luck. But the manager comments that it would be real great if the gambler just walked away right now, turning to ask his assistant what she thinks is the absolute biggest danger in gambling. Hyped up, the other peers push the swordsman to keep riding the hot streak and bet big, while a wicked grin creeps across his opponent's face as he shuffles the wooden tiles. Manager Kim explains that the real danger always starts with easy early wins, and that sinister look on the rival's face confirms this whole thing is a total setup. The young assistant finds herself intrigued by the collector's spot on warning, and just like a dark prophecy, the momentum of the game begins to take a nasty turn. The rival celebrates as he takes the very next round with effortless ease, leaving the swordsman shocked that he barely lost out by a single point, though he tries to brush off the frustration by saying losing is just part of the game. Our guy insists that the stakes on that round were practically pocket change anyway, but while the early losses seemed harmless, the red ink starts piling up real fast. Fired up by his new hand, he swears this is the round where he takes it all back, only for the opponent to reveal his tiles and show a slightly higher score. Desperate, Cho Kong Slang slams down more chips in an attempt to turn the tides, but with complete chill, the rival reveals another piece that edges him out again, faking sympathy while mocking him about how he barely won another close one. Trembling with rage, the young disciple squeezes his last remaining chips in his palm, gritting his teeth as he listens to the rival brag about having better luck today. Back-to-back razor-thin losses completely blind the young martial artist with anger, prompting his buddies to suggest bouncing before things get out of hand. But ignoring every warning, he frantically digs through his rope searching for more silver. His shaking hands pull out the final strings loaded with silver coins, and he shoves everything into the center of the table, betting his entire life savings, leaving the surrounding crowd in utter shock at such a reckless play. With a manic look in his eyes, he claims his gut feeling guarantees a massive comeback. Yet, moments later, the kid looks totally crushed after losing every single coin. Embarrassed to be associated with him, his friends make up some urgent excuse and bolt from the place, leaving the broke swordsman sitting frozen on the tavern bench all by himself. Manager Kim stands up, stating that it is officially time to get down to business, and walking side by side, the two collectors head outside to approach their new client. The cold moon shines bright in the night sky over the mountains of Shaanxi, while outside, the disciple clutches his head in pure, unfiltered despair, sitting on the wooden steps without the slightest clue of what to do with his life. He curses himself in bitter regret over the absolute stupidity he just pulled at the table, with the terror of facing harsh punishment from his sect master consuming his mind. Calm footsteps approach, making the startled junior snap his head up in shock, as the pair of debt collectors pops up, asking if he happens to need some fast cash. The manager offers instant loan approval with zero collateral needed up front, flashing a friendly smile as he presents the Continental Bank, ready to help out. Confused, Cheong stares at the duo without understanding where they even came from, asking what on earth this Continental Bank is supposed to be. Turning the offer over in his head, he finds the easy loan terms pretty suspicious, warily asking if the two of them are just local loan sharks running a racket, but the collector simply replies that they just lend a hand to folks in desperate need of easy funds. Unsheathing his blade, the swordsman takes up a threatening stance, warning that offering dirty loans to the Manhwa sect is straight up asking for a death wish. The manager lets out an easy chuckle, claiming this is all just a silly misunderstanding, before pulling a heavy pouch packed with gleaming silver coins right out of his sleeve. The young disciple's eyes instantly pop at the sight of that much cold cash, while the bank rep points out that a client's social status does not matter to them at all, dropping a hint that this pile of silver can easily win back everything he just lost. Tempted by raw greed, the swordsman starts breaking out in a nervous sweat, finding it totally crazy that someone would just disregard the mighty name of Mount Hua, though the burning urge to get his hands on those coins completely overpowers his logic. Swallowing his pride, the kid decides to take the tempting bait, as an official Continental Bank contract gets rolled out right in front of him. The manager explains that a simple signature is all it takes to release the cash on the spot. So sheathing his sword, the new debtor steps closer, completely drawn in by the deal. Picking up the brush, the disciple gets ready to finalize the agreement, writing down the fake name Im Sobek on the paper to hide his real identity. Handing the paper back, the client declares that the deal is officially done, and with a crazed look in his eyes, the swordsman demands the bag of silver right now. Manager Kim praises his excellent choice and drops the heavy pouch into his hands. And clutching the coins, the desperate debtor sprints right back inside the casino. The assistant comments in utter disbelief on how completely unhinged the guy looked, and looking over the signed sheet, she notices a funny little detail in the registry, curiously asking why they even targeted this particular disciple in the first place, pointing out that while gambling is bad, the kid has not committed any heinous crimes. The collector asks if she really thinks he picks targets based on their faction alignment, explaining that righteous and demonic factions are all just ordinary martial artists to him, and stating that the only real criteria is whether the client possesses what he is looking for. Hearing that logic, Makariwa holds the contract, lost in thought, quietly reflecting on the peculiar philosophy of her enigmatic boss. Heavy stomping footsteps suddenly shatter the quiet of the dark night, as a massive, scar-covered brute marches over with a furious scowl, revealing himself as the boss of the security goons who got dropped earlier. A mob of armed thugs follows close behind, supporting their injured buddy, who was still groaning in pain from the precise nerve strikes he took earlier. An entire squad surrounds the perimeter, led by an imposing bald commander, who points straight at our duo, demanding to know if they were the culprits. Joking around, Manager Kim teases that his assistant should have cleaned up the mess better, while the brute introduces himself as Jang Mo from the Venom Snake faction, barking for answers. The young man casually replies that he simply represents the Continental Bank, but having never heard of such a group, the bald leader assumes the kid is a total nobody, calling him arrogant for daring not to fear the terrifying Venom Snake faction. With an unfazed smirk, our MC asks why he should even care about some random gang, which makes a massive vein pop on the criminal's forehead at such wild disrespect. Enraged, the boss screams at his men to rip the limbs off these insolent intruders, and the armed goons rush forward roaring, ready to execute the bloody order. One thug leaps through the air with a heavy cleaver, aiming to slice the collector in two. But without taking a step, Manager Kim strikes the incoming leg with a light tap, landing a pinpoint blow right on the joint with surgical precision. The man screams bloody murder as his entire leg completely locks up, dropping his weapon and collapsing into the dirt without any power to stand. Another goon sprints in with his blade raised high, trying to skewer the young man, but shifting his body with effortless agility, the manager easily sidesteps the thrust, immediately readying an open palm to counterattack with a concentrated blast of air. An invisible shockwave smashes into the attacker's chest, launching him backwards, sending his body flying through the pitch-black night sky, before crashing down in agonizing pain right at the feet of his own boss. Jang Mo watches the whole beatdown in a cold sweat, terrified by the intruder's raw strength, his wide eyes betraying the sheer dread of seeing his top fighters folded like paper. The collector just stands there chilling beneath the moonlight, leaving the faction leader unable to believe his entire squad got dropped in mere seconds. In the gang leader's mind, this smiling young man is an absolute freak of nature. Swallowing hard, the hulking brute desperately tries to play off his own panic, forcing a fake laugh while praising the kid's skills for someone his age. He boldly demands that the young man kneel and apologize if he wants to be spared, but the collector's piercing glare makes the massive thug instantly shudder with dread. Wasting zero time, Manager Kim closes the distance, standing face to face with the rival, and lands a devastating gut punch that completely obliterates Jang Mo's guard. Blown backwards, the gang leader spits up saliva as he howls in agony, his heavy body slamming clumsily into the dirt and kicking up a huge cloud of dust. Seeing their boss get folded in one shot, the remaining goons flee in absolute terror, while the manager just watches them scatter with an amused little smirk. He casually warns that if they ever open another illegal casino around here, things will get way worse, while the beaten leader just whimpers on the ground, completely powerless to fight back. Turning around, our guy calls out to his assistant, telling her it is her turn now, pointing at the courtyard and ordering the poor girl to drag all the unconscious bodies away. Grumbling about her bossy boss, she starts hauling the heavy thugs across the dirt, while the collector looks up at the starry sky, soaking in the peaceful night air, quietly wondering if their special client managed to win back any silver at the tables. Deep inside the hall, a massive crowd surrounds Cheongshang's table, where the swordsman stares at his wooden tiles with a terrified cold sweat, slamming the wood in pure rage as he complains about losing 5 times in a row. Completely tilted, the young disciple accuses everyone in the room of rigging the game against him, but his opponent just laughs, mockingly telling the kid that his luck has officially run dry, even taunting him by asking if a proud Manhwa swordsman is about to burst into tears. The entire gambling den erupts into laughter, utterly humiliating the junior master. While outside, the night remains calm and quiet under the bright full moon. Suddenly, the disciple comes sprinting out of the shack with a look of pure panic, and Manager Kim greets him casually, asking if he is heading home already. Relieved to see him, the broke debtor thanks the heavens that the banker is still hanging around, desperately begging right on the spot for another fat stack of silver, swearing that this time he will win everything back and pay back the loan with heavy interest. The manager calmly agrees to the deal, but clarifies that he is going to need some collateral this time. So reaching down to his waist, the panicked kid grabs the ornament hanging from his belt, offering the sacred purple cloud jade pendant handed to him by the sect leader himself. Blinded by his gambling addiction, the junior hands over his most treasured possession, and accepting the collateral, the collector hands over another heavy bundle of silver. Cheongchang snatches the cash and dashes straight back inside to bet it all over again. With 2 whole hours passing as the manager waits patiently outside in the cold, rushed footsteps echo once again from the casino entrance, as the ruined swordsman stumbles through the door, begging for yet another loan, swearing on the sacred name of Mount Hua that he will return the money tenfold, while the collector keeps his cool, telling him to relax and claiming he has total faith in him. On the third loan, the young disciple grips his tiles with violently shaking hands, overwhelming frustration washing over him as he stares at yet another humiliating loss. Shortly after, a 4th loan gets handed out right at the casino door, and rolling into his 5th attempt, the desperate gambler takes another pouch of silver. A desperate punch slams into the table the moment the final round is called, leaving the ruined swordsman sitting in silence, staring blankly at his total downfall. Shrieks of pure agony rip through the defeated gambler's throat, the desperate scream piercing the late-night air and reaching the collectors waiting outside. Looking satisfied, Manager Kim announces that their business hours are officially over for the day, stating that it is time to pack up, which leaves his partner completely confused. The assistant asks if they shouldn't just collect the massive debt right now, but letting out a yawn, the young man notes that certain debts age much better over time. Worried, she wonders what they will do if the disciple flat out refuses to pay, and the manager calmly replies that such an outcome would actually be the best-case scenario, adding with a sinister grin that it would allow him to collect through the harshest method possible. By morning, the bright sun illuminates the majestic halls of the Mount Wasek, where solemn silence reigns through the elegant corridors of the grand main temple, and heavy wooden doors guard the private quarters of the elite disciples. Curled up in his dark room, Chomshan clutches his head in total, absolute panic, shaking uncontrollably as reality finally hits him regarding the disaster he created. Muttering under his breath, he freaks out over the mountain of gambling debt he racked up, finding it completely unreal that he pulled such reckless nonsense in a single night. His terror spikes upon remembering he used the sect's prestigious name to borrow funds, and even worse was handing over the priceless purple cloud jade pendant as collateral. Tugging at his hair, the disciple breaks down crying, imagining the brutal punishment waiting for him, knowing full well that if this gets discovered, his master will show zero mercy. Suddenly, loud knocks on the wooden door shatter the silence of his chamber, as a fellow disciple calls out from the hallway, announcing that the sect leader wants to see him. Tongxing's eyes go wide as his heart instantly drops into his stomach, cold sweat pouring down his face at the thought of that dreaded summons. And barely able to breathe, he panics about what will happen once he faces the sect leader. Moments later, the junior enters the grand pavilion and drops to his knees with deep respect, while the venerable leader, Hyunjong, gazes down at him with an imposing, dignified look. Trembling all over, Chang answers in a shaky voice to show total submission, and the Grandmaster asks why he skipped out on the sect's mandatory morning training. Making up a quick excuse, the kid lies and says he was feeling under the weather, which makes Hyunjong gently scold him before reaching deep into his robes, tossing a small item through the air with a smooth, effortless flick. An elegant wooden box lands softly on the floor right in front of the disciple, and staring at the gift, the young man wonders what on earth this is supposed to be. On the lacquered lid, a golden plum blossom emblem gleams brilliantly, and a soothing medicinal aroma instantly fills the entire pavilion. The sect leader reveals that inside lies the precious plum blossom pill, leaving the young swordsman in total disbelief over such an incredible treasure. Carefully opening the box, he finds the legendary elixir of the Manhwa sect, a radiant purple medicinal sphere glowing brightly inside the small container. Stunned, the junior instantly recognizes an authentic plum blossom pill, swallowing hard as he realizes the Grandmaster knows nothing about his gambling spree. Holding the sacred treasure in his shaking hands, the disciple looks up at his master, while a worn fatherly smile graces the face of the veteran sect leader. Hyunjong tells the young man to rest up, reminding him of his crucial role in the sect's future. And choked up with emotion, the kid stares at the medicine, feeling his master's genuine care. That heartwarming concern truly touches the disciple's soul for a brief moment. But almost immediately a selfish thought sneaks right back into the junior's head. If he sells this legendary relic, he can easily buy back the sect pendant he gave as collateral. Though, sitting in the courtyard, he feels like complete trash for even thinking of pawning the gift. Soft footsteps and gentle chatter suddenly catch his attention down the hall, and looking over at the gates, he spots a crowd of local villagers gathered together, carrying baskets of food. The elderly folks ask for blessings from the Manhwa Taoists, while the polite disciples hold the people's hands and promise to pray for their well-being. These humble commoners travel from miles away, placing their faith in the pure Tao of the sect, offering fresh fruits and homemade treats with sincere gratitude. The sacred, noble atmosphere of the temple reflects the inner peace of its disciples, and watching the pure scene unfold, Cheongshang feels the crushing weight of his own shame. Leaning against the wooden pillar, the swordsman looks completely defeated, gritting his teeth in disgust at the terrible mistakes he made the previous night. He slaps the ground in frustration while gripping the pillbox tight, staring at the lacquered finish as he desperately tries to rationalize his secret scheme. Tucking the medicine into his robes, the desperate kid concludes this is his only way out, convincing himself that pawning the treasure on the black market is the smartest move. After all, the pill only gives strength, but losing the pendant means getting kicked out forever. So the disciple lies to his own conscience, pretending that clearing the debt justifies anything. A single drop of sweat drips down as he schemes his midnight escape, swearing never to gamble again as he hurries across the mountain courtyard. Night blankets the temple roof tiles beneath the dim glow of the full moon, swift footsteps echoing softly as the kid stealthily darts across the rooftops, clearing the sect's protective perimeter wall with a clean acrobatic leap. His silhouette cuts through the night sky, landing silently outside the temple grounds. And touching down on the dirt trail, he gets ready to rush down the mountain. Crouched low, the disciple takes a deep breath to calm his racing heart, silently begging his master for forgiveness over this desperate action. Making his way down the pitch-black path, the young man heads straight toward the city, until a stern voice calls out Cheongshan's name right from the thick woods. Startled, the swordsman spots a tall figure blocking the path ahead. The man smiling as he asks where our junior is planning to head off to so late at night. Filled with dread, the runaway freezes, realizing he just got caught by the night patrol. And that guard is none other than Xiang Yom, a senior brother notorious for being extremely strict. Having zero patience for games, the veteran demands to know the kid's real destination, while the stuttering disciple lies, claiming he only stepped outside for some fresh air. Suspicious, the senior brother mocks the idea of someone vaulting the outer walls just for some air and sweating buckets. Che Hongshang realizes his lame excuse sounded completely ridiculous. Taking slow, measured steps, the senior approaches to stare down the junior up close, his sharp gaze scanning the suspicious kid's tense, stiff posture, and noticing that the disciple is clutching something hidden deep inside his robes. Demanding straight answers, the senior orders the kid to reveal what he is hiding, and with a swift flick of his hand, he snatches the wooden box right out of his robes. Sliding the lid open, the veteran instantly recognizes the legendary plum blossom pill, the medicinal sphere glowing with a soft purple radiance that lights up the dark woods. Shocked, the senior asks where this came from, and the junior quickly explains it was a gift from the master. A look of pure astonishment washes over the strict disciplinarian's face, followed by a proud, joyful smile spreading across his lips. And handing back the box, he praises the Grandmaster for recognizing the rookie's immense talent. But the senior brother finds it odd that he would choose to ingest the divine medicine out in the wild. So the embarrassed junior lies again, claiming he felt self-conscious under the eyes of his peers. Tears of pure emotion well up in the veteran's eyes upon hearing such deep humility. And apologizing for his suspicion, the guard deeply respects the young disciple's pure heart. Hiked up, the senior insists on guarding the perimeter so the junior can consume the pill right here, leaving Chol Cheng wide-eyed in absolute panic, unable to find an escape from this trap. The senior presses on, warning that absorbing such massive internal chi without guidance is dangerous. And sitting cross-legged on the grass, the older brother gets into position to offer spiritual support. He waves him over with excitement, while the kid curses the senior's stubbornness in his head, clasping his hands and claiming that he prefers to break through all on his own. But the veteran shoots down the excuse, warning that any tiny mistake could trigger a deadly chi deviation, refusing any more backtalk and ordering the kid to stop stalling and swallow the pill. Chu Zhangshang tries faking stomach cramps and muscle aches, but none of it moves the stubborn senior, leaving the two sitting in silence as the junior realizes he totally lost the argument. Silent dread completely overwhelms the broke disciple as he hits a dead end, his hands trembling with rage as he opens the small golden box for the final time. The senior brother raises his arms from behind, ready to guide the spiritual circulation. While holding the glowing pill, the disciple internally weeps over all the lost money. Left with zero choice, the young man pops the elixir into his mouth and shuts his eyes in sorrow, swallowing the pill and permanently sealing the fate of that sacred treasure. Spiritual flames instantly erupt around the kid, generating a ferocious vortex of wind. And locking his hands into a meditative seal, he channels the roaring ocean of spiritual chi. The refined plum blossom energy flows smoothly through every single one of his meridians, leaving the veteran amazed as he praises the pure density of his junior's new power. He warmly congratulates the swordsman for reaching an entirely new realm of martial cultivation, while Qi Shangshan quickly stands up, desperately masking the boiling fury eating him alive. Clasping his hands, he offers a formal bow of gratitude to his senior brother, thanking him for providing spiritual protection during the absorption of the grand pill. A fake smile is plastered across his face as the satisfied senior takes his leave. But the moment he is alone in the dark woods, the disciple collapses onto the damp dirt. Staring into the night sky, he mutters that his entire life is completely over, because the pill was eaten and his power shot up. But his only ticket to paying off the debt is gone. With 0 silver to buy back his jade pendant, he knows the debt collectors will hunt him down, making his expulsion from the sect feel totally guaranteed the moment the scandal breaks. The young swordsman stares into the dark forest with an empty, lost gaze, until a wicked twisted spark suddenly ignites inside the cornered disciple's eyes. A sick smile begins spreading across his lips as a dark realization hits him, slowly rising to his feet with the thought that a debt only exists if the lender is still alive. Drawing his razor-sharp sword, the corrupt martial artist schemes to make the collectors vanish forever, a murderous glint completely taking over the face of the fear-driven swordsman. As an elite Plum Blossom master, he genuinely believes he can erase the loan sharks without leaving a trace. And feeling raw power surging through his core, the young man swells with lethal confidence. Gripping his cold steel in the woods, he decides he has zero reason to ever pay back a single coin. With a twisted look in his eyes, the disciple decides the easiest fix is just erasing his lenders. While the cold moonlight illuminates the quiet rooftops of the town deep in the dead of night, steady footsteps tap across the icy cobblestones of the deserted alley. As Chong Sang sneaks through the dark with his mind hyper-focused on his target, stopping right in front of a local lodge to confirm he reached the right spot. The building standing before him is the well-known Huayang Inn. Remembering how the manager casually mentioned he was staying in room 5, and a cold, ruthless glare washes over the swordsman's face. Pushing the entrance open, the young man slips inside without making a single sound, with dim lanterns softly lighting the empty hallway on the second floor. Creeping forward on his tiptoes, the kid glides across the wooden boards, rationalizing in his twisted head that an entire debt simply vanishes once the lender is gone, since all he wants is to take back his jade pendant and wipe the slate clean forever. Right in front of him stands the door marked with the number 5, and positioning himself outside, the rogue disciple grips the hilt of his sword, pressing his ear against the wood to catch faint whispers coming from inside. The soft voices of a man and a woman are chatting away in the room, leaving no doubt in the swordsman's mind that both debt collectors are present. So drawing his blade inch by inch, he gets ready to drop a fatal strike, setting an aggressive stance to end everything with a single decisive blow. He whispers wickedly that it is a shame he has to take them both down together, his boots cracking the floorboards as he launches into a sudden forward dash. Spinning his body with blinding speed, he concentrates all his power into the 7th form, bringing the iconic Plum Blossom sword art to life with a radiant pink glow, as razor-sharp petals of pure chi slice through the air on a devastating trajectory. The falling blossoms scattering strike tears clean through the bedroom wall, and a deafening blast of energy completely shreds the entire wooden framework to splinters. Roof tiles and support beams go flying everywhere from the destructive shockwave, while glowing petal lights drift softly down amidst the shattered debris. And as swordsman stares at the total obliteration of the smoking ruined room, letting out a breath, he mutters that he finally put an end to his living nightmare, feeling zero guilt and only experiencing a wave of sheer, unadulterated relief. As the suffocating tightness in his chest completely evaporates, terrified screams from local townspeople start ringing out across the village below. But ignoring the commotion, the kid starts sifting through the broken planks on the floor, his eyes scanning desperately for his lost sacred jade relic. A shiny glint suddenly catches his eye through the settling dust, resting among the wooden scraps where the sacred item glows completely unharmed. The junior celebrates with pure joy upon securing the purple cloud pendant, clutching the treasure tightly before sprinting to flee the scene of the crime. With a swift leap, the disciple escapes straight through the ruined roof of the inn, dashing across the rooftops at top speed to vanish into the dark night. His rapid strides kick up dust through the deserted town streets, while the physical exhaustion from running does nothing to kill the euphoria rushing through his veins. Catching his breath on the move without slowing down for a second, smug chuckles slip out as the sweet taste of victory takes over his senses, breaking into an unhinged laugh while pressing the jade necklace firmly against his chest. With wide, crazed eyes, he repeats to himself that the whole ordeal is finally over, feeling a profound rush of joy at the thought of surviving his absolute lowest point. Getting way too cocky, the swordsman makes the rookie mistake of taking the main avenue, sprinting in a straight line down the brightly lit road and leaving obvious tracks behind. Up on a high rooftop, a shadowy figure watches the sloppy getaway in silence, an imposing silhouette tracking every single step the kid takes under the moonlight, with the stern gaze of a veteran observing the runaway without being detected. Back at Manhwa, complete silence reigns over the solemn temple corridors, where Chomjong admires his recovered pendant inside his pitch-black room, holding the jewel up to the moonlight and smiling in pure relief at his triumph, thinking to himself that having the sacred relic back is literally all that matters. But just as he lays down in bed, heavy banging on the door shatters the silence, as a deep, booming voice calls out the swordsman's name, instantly turning his blood to ice. From that commanding tone, the kid instantly recognizes his martial uncle Hyunhyo, an esteemed high-ranking elder of the Manhwa sect. Stepping into the chamber, Yahello notes that his junior is still wide awake, giving him a suspicious look while asking if his late-night training went well. Strolling calmly around the room, the veteran scans the entire surrounding space, casually mentioning that a massive explosion just leveled an entire inn down in town. And to make matters worse, the strike was executed using the official Manhwa Plum Blossom Sword technique. Cold sweat pours down Chongshang's face as he realizes he has been totally exposed, while Yahello extends his arm, demanding the boy hold out his hands this instant. The elder states firmly that unsheathing a blade in anger always leaves distinct traces behind, and paralyzed with dread, the kid can barely move under his uncle's suffocating pressure. A bitter lump forms in the trapped disciple's throat, as he slowly raises his trembling hands with his open palms facing upward. His shaking fingers betray the intense strain of recent combat, and the elder's piercing gaze confirms the fresh callus marks etched into the kid's skin, with a grim, disappointed scowl settling onto the master's face once the truth becomes clear. Drawing his sword in one crisp motion, the veteran rests the tip right against his throat, making the swordsman's eyes bulge as he feels the icy-cold steel pressing on his neck. Yahello demands an immediate explanation for why he committed such a monstrous act, but stuttering in panic, the rookie desperately tries to play dumb, only for the uncle to shut him down, revealing he watched the kid smiling like an idiot while running down the road. Memories of that reckless sprint flashback, proving the elder saw the entire thing from above. And the master spits that he is thoroughly disgusted to see a Manhwa disciple turning his blade on innocent folks. With zero room to deny it, the junior casts his eyes down in utter humiliation and terror, his knees slamming hard against the wooden floorboards in complete surrender. Weeping at the elder's feet, the disciple confesses to committing an unforgivable blunder, spilling every detail about his filthy gambling addiction without holding back. He recounts the hollow rush of those early wins at the dice tables, followed by the crushing streak of losses that swallowed up every single copper he owned, and how pure desperation pushed him into the madness of wagering his master's sacred pendant. In a blind attempt to win back his honor, he took out the loans from the collectors, the memory of the bespectacled assistant in the alley flashing through his guilty mind, along with manager Kim's cheerful face that lured him right into the financial trap. Chongshang bawls his eyes out, explaining he only wanted to reclaim the precious jade amulet, prompting the elder to ask if he truly believed murdering his lenders would wipe away the debt. Drowning in shame, the disciple lacks the courage to even lift his forehead off the floor, bowing repeatedly while begging for forgiveness over his unforgivable crime, pleading for mercy and swearing to accept whatever brutal punishment the sect decides to hand down. A heavy, contemplative look settles onto the stern martial uncle's face, while Che Yongsang remains prostrated as the sharp steel gleams right beside his head. Sheathing his sword, the martial uncle simply orders the young man to get up, and with a bruised forehead, Chongshang lifts his tear-soaked face in pure disbelief. Turning toward the open window, the elder lets out a long, heavy sigh, a conflicted expression washing over the veteran's weathered features. He reflects on the fact that the sect's greatest rising prodigy cannot just be discarded like trash, deciding in the end that he will turn a blind eye to the terrible crime the kid committed. Shocked by such unexpected mercy, the junior can barely process what he just heard, fresh tears of overwhelming gratitude streaming down his cheeks. Yahello makes it crystal clear that killing ordinary folks is still a severe sin, but the glorious future of Manhwa must come above all else. His chin quivering, the boy breaks down into a mix of relief and crushing guilt, choking out his uncle's name with a voice completely cracked by emotion, bowing over and over again to thank the master for granting him this second chance. The veteran listens to the sobs while staring out into the pitch-black night, before curiously asking who exactly those lenders were that he ended up killing, suggesting the temple should offer up prayers for the deceased souls of those loan sharks. Straining his memory, the kid replies that they were from some group called the Continental Bank, and deadly suffocating silence instantly freezes the elder's entire body solid. As Cheon Shane tries to recall the exact name of the man who ran the collection, the veteran suddenly lunges forward, violently grabbing the junior by his collar, leaving the terrified disciple wondering what could have possibly caused this reaction. With bloodshot, bulging eyes, the uncle barks at him to repeat what he just said, and stuttering in terror, the boy confirms the name of that Continental Bank once more. An icy chill races down the rookie's spine when he sees his master's face, realizing that the elder's hands are trembling uncontrollably out of pure raw dread. The young swordsman is left totally baffled seeing a legendary elder panic like this. As the master tightens his grip on his robes, demanding the collector's exact name, In a weak, trembling voice, the boy answers that the men went by Manager Kim, causing thick beads of cold sweat to pour down the seasoned warrior's face. As sheer, unfiltered horror locks into the uncle's wide eyes, the scene cuts rapidly over to the Grand Central Pavilion of Manhwa, where frantic footsteps echo loudly through the dark hallways of the headquarters. Hyo barges straight into the sect leader's private chambers during his nightly calligraphy, screaming out the Grandmaster's name while gasping for air in total disarray. Surprised, Hyunjong lifts his inkbrush and asks what is with all the sudden noise, but the elder drops to his knees, shouting that a catastrophic crisis has just fallen upon them. Keeping his focus on the paper, the leader tells him to calm down and steady his mind, preaching that both the sword and the brush must flow with the absolute stillness of water. Losing his mind, the frantic elder screams that the Continental Bank has appeared in their region, causing the inkbrush to instantly freeze and bleed a massive black blot across the parchment. Shell-shocked, the sect master drops the wooden brush, which clatters onto the desk with a sharp snap, the tool rolling across the table as the venerable Grandmaster completely freezes in pure terror. His eyes bulging wide, the Supreme Leader slowly turns around with a face pale as a ghost. As a heavy, suffocating atmosphere smothers the entire leadership hall, thick drops of sweat dripped down the esteemed master's white beard, swallowing hard as his brain struggles to process the return of that forbidden syndicate. Stuttering, the Grandmaster asks what that bank could possibly have to do with Manhwa, and the elder reveals in full-blown panic that Chonchang claimed to have murdered their agents. Indescribable horror strikes deep into the heart of Manhwa's Supreme Leader, leaping to his feet and anxiously demanding to know if the deaths were officially confirmed. The sheer possibility of touching a single hair on anyone from that institution terrifies him to his core. So using his ultimate authority, he orders an emergency general assembly of every single member. The elder widens his eyes upon hearing the command to sound the sacred leadership plaque, while the sect leader roars to bring Chongshang here immediately to explain every detail of that attack. Turning around to carry out the order, the veteran hesitates right by the doorway, his voice heavy with deep dread as he calls out to the Grandmaster one more time. Clenching his fists tight, the elder asks if it could truly be those two monsters from back then, leaving the Supreme Leader standing in grim silence as dark shadows mask his face. Very few in the sect still remember the pure horror of the ancient Continental War, with flashbacks showing a young Hyunjong weeping uncontrollably amidst towering flames. Raging fire consumed the entire sacred sanctuary while disciples fell left and right, a literal mountain of slaughtered swordsmen blanketing the scorched temple grounds, all because the silhouette of a single man standing beside a child reduced everything to ash. The sect master's eyes carry the unbearable trauma of that unforgettable massacre, admitting that while he cannot be sure, he dreads that it might be the exact same entities. Gritting his teeth, the Grandmaster struggles to suppress the panic threatening to crush his heart, barking with desperate urgency that the mobilization must happen this very second, because the very survival of Manhwa now hangs on every fleeting moment. Out in the open courtyard, dozens of disciples assemble in crisp, perfect formation, confused whispers spreading like wildfire among the ranks of young martial artists, since nobody can fathom the reason for an emergency muster in the middle of the night. A few sleepy swordsmen yawn while trying to figure out what is going on, murmuring that this is the first time the sacred plaque has ever been activated in their lifetimes, with the crowd speculating if a full-scale invasion by the demonic cult is currently underway. Historically, this extreme call only sounded when the sect faced total and utter annihilation, and heavy footsteps announced the arrival of the Grand Elders atop the central staircase. The Supreme Leader and the Elders step forward, looking down on the gathered legion below, with Hyunjong taking his place at the front with a stiff, overwhelming presence. His expression carries a terrifying severity that none of the disciples have ever witnessed before, making every single disciple tense up upon sensing the crushing aura of their leader. The Grandmaster's usual calm and gentle gaze has been completely replaced by chilling frost, and an absolute, suffocating silence sweeps across the torchlit courtyard. The leader's booming voice breaks the tension, calling out Choshang's name, glaring at the crowd and ordering the junior to step forward immediately. Drenched in cold sweat, the young swordsman swallows hard with his heart pounding out of his chest, parting through his peers as he steps out utterly terrified of what is about to go down. He walks up the stone stairs and offers a deep, respectful bow before his master, asking in a shaking voice why he was suddenly summoned before the whole sect. But with a brutal swing, the Grandmaster strikes the kid's face with a violent backhand, the sheer impact slamming the disciple straight into the stone ground in front of everyone. Enraged, the sect master roars, asking if the fool has any idea what kind of disaster he just caused, and showing zero mercy, the elder mounts him, raining down furious, relentless punches. Changshang gets completely battered by the brutal combo, spitting blood all over the place, while the veteran keeps swinging in blind rage because the idiot dared to mess with the Continental Bank. Heavy thuds echo through the dead of night as the defenseless junior takes a ruthless beating, leaving the entire assembly of disciples watching the scene in complete and utter shock. One of the juniors whispers, trying to comprehend what this Continental Bank even is, while the other elders rush in to pull the Grandmaster off before he literally beats the kid to death. Blinded by fury, Hyunjong screams that it would be 1,000,000 times better if the boy just dropped dead, held back by his peers as he tries to catch his breath while the junior lies sprawled out on the floor. Panting heavily, the sect master struggles for air while being restrained by the senior elders, while Cheongshang remains collapsed on the cold stones, groaning in sheer agony from the blows. The disciple spits out a mouthful of blood, feeling his entire face completely swollen, as Hyunjong glares down at the reckless rookie with eyes dripping in despair. In pure outrage, the Grandmaster curses the kid for being a reckless, brainless fool, roaring that his sheer stupidity has officially doomed the entire future of Manhwa. Bleeding heavily, the junior looks up at his master, still failing to understand the true gravity of the situation, coughing violently as he uses the stone floor to push himself up into a kneeling position. His shaking hands grip the cold tiles before the entire temple leadership, as the disciple admits he messed up by gambling and trying to take someone else's life, yet cries that he cannot comprehend why everyone is losing their minds over some random loan sharks. Another thunderous slap cracks across the kid's jaw, whipping his head violently to the side, with the furious leader screaming that he does not care about petty crimes, but rather who the target was. Clutching his bruised face, the junior sits there stunned by that chilling response, while the Grandmaster inhales deeply, fighting to control the suffocating panic attacking his chest. Clenching his fists until his knuckles turn white, he orders the disciple to answer only what he is asked, demanding in a trembling voice to know if those bank collectors are truly dead. Desperate, he practically begs for a solid confirmation that both targets were completely erased. And stuttering, the boy replies that he is pretty sure he took them both out. The veteran presses on, demanding to know if he confirmed the corpses with his own eyes, yanking the kid by the collar to ask if he watched them stop breathing. Changshang confesses that he blew up the entire room and merely assumed they were dead, which sends the master into a fit of pure rage because the idiot never checked the bodies. Hitting the floor as he gets tossed aside, the rookie gets cursed out for his absolute incompetence, while the leader spirals into full panic, asking what on earth they will do if the duo survived. Sprawled on the stone, the kid tries to process why such a mighty veteran is trembling in fear, thinking to himself that it feels unfair to be treated like some irredeemable monster. After all, the whole inn collapsed under the most devastating sword technique the sect has to offer, with all the support beams and roofing caving in to completely crush the room beneath the rubble. So, not even an elite martial artist would walk away easily, let alone ordinary loan sharks. But the venerable Hyunjung knows all too well what that terrifying organization is capable of, lamenting that it would have been 10 times better if the boy had died under the rubble instead. Showing zero affection, he spits that the kid should have just rotted away in a gutter, because if he had died alone, Manhwa would have avoided complete and total destruction. Only at this very moment does Changshang finally realize the colossal danger he has brought upon them all, realizing that the very people he tried to murder send shivers down the spine of his sect's supreme leader. That bank represents an untouchable, forbidden power that should never be crossed under any circumstances. So spinning around, the Grandmaster declares maximum alert and orders the immediate evacuation of all visitors. Every disciple in attendance snaps a crisp martial salute and shouts in acknowledgement, and within seconds, dozens of warriors rush off to reinforce the massive mountain gates. Commands echo across the courtyard, ordering the total lockdown of every trail and path leading up the peak, while the beaten disciple lies on the ground, wondering how things ever spiraled to this extreme. His martial uncle walks up to the ramparts, looking down on the junior with deep pity, telling his nephew in a solemn tone that he better start praying with everything he's got. He warns that their only sliver of hope is that the collectors actually perished in that weak ambush, when suddenly, the sentry at the main gate blows the war horn, signaling an incoming approach. Piercing alarm horns shatter the early morning silence across Mount Hua, making Elder Hyunheo whip his head around in horror upon hearing the urgent shout, as the lookout screams in sheer panic that 2 suspicious figures are casually walking up the mountain path. Xianshan shudders violently on the stones, feeling his worst nightmare turn into reality. his heart pounding against his ribs upon hearing that two individuals are strolling right up to their gates. Soft plum blossom petals drift through the air beneath the silver glow of the full moon, blooming along the slopes in stark, peaceful contrast to the suffocating tension among the guards. Strolling along the petal-covered path, Manager Kim and Mak Raiwa advance with total ease, their steady steps confirming that neither of the debt collectors suffered so much as a scratch. The pair walk side by side, enjoying the crisp mountain air during their casual hike, while a confident, serene smile rests on the face of our ruthless debt collector. The assistant walks gracefully beside him, admiring the grand gates of the sacred sanctuary, until the terrified gatekeepers draw their swords and scream at them to halt right there. The sentry shouts that Manhwa is strictly closed to all outsiders for the day, demanding the visitors state their names and their business on this sacred peak. Manager Kim just offers a cold, polite smile as he locks eyes with the guards at the main entrance, planting his foot firmly forward to take another decisive step toward the temple. In a clear, booming voice, he formally introduces himself as Manager Kim from the Continental Bank, announcing with a chilling gaze that he has arrived to collect the outstanding debt owed under the name of Manhwa. Looking at the shattered roof back at the inn, several townspeople and sect scouts gathered around in shock, as a massive cloud of dust billowed up from between the broken wooden planks. The crowd was desperately trying to figure out if that was an assault by a rival army, with bits of the ceiling continuing to drop as onlookers suspected an all-out raid. Dead on the floor, the girl had woken up groaning in pain from the heavy shock, blood dripping down the head of Manager Kim, who used his own body as a shield to protect her. Opening her eyes, the young woman noticed her boss hovering directly over her, and despite bleeding, the man calmly asked if she was unharmed. Relieved, the girl replied that she was fine, though she immediately worried about his condition. Before Kim stood right up, brushing the thick dust off his robes without a care. Sitting amidst the rubble, she apologized for causing such a mess. But adjusting his sleeves, our MC replied that protecting company assets is standard protocol. Offering a hand, he noted it would be a massive loss if his assistant ended up injured, since she is officially classified as a valuable asset of the Continental Bank. Blushing slightly, she was left completely speechless by his blunt response, as Kim called her back to business and helped her get back on her feet. Moving right along, the two now advanced straight toward the main gates of Manhwa, where one of the guards swallows hard upon seeing the duo walk up without a care. Whispering among themselves, the disciples freeze in shock at the mention of that forbidden bank name. Right as the Grange gates swing open and an imposing presence steps out before them. It is Elder Yahello himself from the prestigious Manhwa sect, the nervous sentry calling out to his superior the moment he spots his arrival. Walking down the stone stairs with measured steps, the old master approaches the visitors, and, clasping his hands in a sign of deep respect, he offers a formal martial bow. Yahello introduces himself and asks if they truly hail from the Continental Bank, leaving all the watching disciples standing there completely dumbfounded, while the assistant widens her eyes, unable to believe the elder's humble attitude. Nobody in their right mind ever expected to see a Manhwa elder bow down to a debt collector. But flashing a confident smile, Kim introduces himself as the branch manager and thanks him for the warm welcome. Keeping his composure steady, the elder listens to every word in dead silence, explaining that he is simply extending basic courtesy, since this marks their very first visit to the peak. Hearing that, our shark collector keeps his eyes locked onto the veteran, slowly exhaling as he prepares his comeback, with Kim playfully praising the sect's legendary hospitality for treating loan sharks so nicely on their very first meeting. That teasing remark makes the elder's face darken in an instant. 30 years ago, someone from the Continental Bank climbed this very mountain and shook the entire sect to its core. So if this kid were an actual member, he definitely should have called out the lie about this being their first visit. But our guy just agreed without a shred of hesitation or shame. Analyzing that reaction, the elder concludes the man standing before him is an absolute fraud. Furious at the sheer audacity of someone trying to humiliate his clan by posing as an agent from that bank. Turning his back, the veteran decides to keep up appearances for the time being, faking hospitality as he invites the duo inside to talk things over calmly. Since Yahello prefers moving carefully so he does not repeat his junior's reckless mistake, though deep down, his real plan is making this imposter pay dearly later on. Night blankets the illuminated pavilion sitting high atop the mountain peak, where the Grandmasters pace back and forth in the main hall under suffocating tension. Repeating the name of the bank over and over, the leader tries to process what he just heard, with Hyunjong genuinely worrying if that forbidden syndicate has truly returned to the world. Ever since the brutal clash 30 years ago, the bank's agents had completely vanished off the map. without a single whisper or rumor about them ever surfacing across the continent again, leaving him to wonder why on earth they would suddenly pop back up out of nowhere. And making things even worse, what if their own disciples somehow managed to run up a massive debt with them? Steady footsteps echo down the corridor as the escort suddenly halts in the middle of the hallway. And watching the entrance, Hyunjung wonders if this whole mess is just a bizarre coincidence. The sound of approaching footsteps snaps the master to attention, making him turn around. As the manager and his assistant step into the pavilion, guided in by the other elder, walking with absolute authority, Kim carries himself with total composure, while the clan leader's eyes go wide the second he locks eyes with the young man, quickly noticing just how remarkably young this debt collector actually looks, with a vibe completely different from the terrifying bank figures the veteran remembered from his past. In his mind, he hesitates, unsure if the kid is a genuine successor or just an arrogant fake. But despite his doubts, the Grandmaster stays cautious to prevent a bloody tragedy from befalling his sect. Offering a respectful martial bow, Kim introduces himself once again as the branch manager, and Hyunjung introduces himself as the leader of Manhwa, stating that he is already briefed on the situation. Wasting zero time, the supreme leader orders his men to drag the guilty party right into the room, and escorted by temple guards, the battered disciple is dragged before the entire assembly. Heavily bruised and running on fumes, the kid can barely keep himself upright on his feet, while Kim playfully greets his valued client, taking note of his beat-up condition with a smirk. Terrified out of his mind, the disciple cannot comprehend how the collector survived his ultimate sword strike, as the Grandmaster barks with supreme authority, commanding the boy to apologize on the spot. Rattled by the harsh scolding, the junior swallows hard and feels the crushing weight of his shame, keeping his mouth shut tight as he hesitates before making a move, dropping his head low and stepping forward to drop onto his knees. But watching the drama unfold, Kim tells him not to bother since his bruised pride is not worth a single copper anyway. The Grandmaster finds the refusal strange, assuming a formal apology would be the proper way to start. But smiling warmly, the manager clarifies that he did not come for apologies and will not be offering discounts for them either. Veins bulge across the veteran's forehead at the collector's blatant disrespect, a wave of fury washing over the old master, who fantasizes about erasing the kid right then and there. Lowering his head, the elder takes a deep breath to suppress his burning urge to strike, clearing his throat to mask his boiling rage while resting his chin in his hands. Trying to change the subject, he suggests they head further inside to negotiate in private. But shooting down the offer, Kim prefers to settle every single bill right here in the open courtyard. Instantly, the sharp young assistant adjusts the frame of her glasses, balancing her ledger and abacus in hand as she prepares to crunch the numbers. With blinding speed, her fingers begin flicking the wooden beads across the frame, reading aloud the detailed breakdown of the debtor's very first loan. The principal amount started at 500 yang, and adding the agreed-upon interest rates, the initial sum immediately jumps to 1,000 silver yanking. Shocked by the figures, the surrounding disciples step back, unable to believe their ears, while the assistant moves right along to calculating the second loan taken by the junior, stacking the base value with accumulated interest, late fees, and extreme risk penalties. The tap skyrockets, and one final click of the abacus wraps up the debt's brutal math. Looking up at the sect, she reveals that the grand total due has reached 21,000 yang. The indebted disciple shudders in absolute terror, gritting his teeth in pure despair, while his peers echo the staggering amount, completely dumbfounded by the number. 21,000 yang echoes through the open courtyard, leaving every single person in utter shock. As the desperate kid bites his lip, cursing under his breath out of sheer dread, sweating buckets, he tries to challenge the predatory rate by claiming he borrowed way less, prompting leader Hyunjung to demand they bring the contracts forward for a full review. That massive fortune represented an impossible sum for the humble Taoists residing on the peak. Yet, thinking fast, the sect leader secretly feels lucky to settle the entire crisis with just money. Hyunjung knows he must avoid all trouble with the bank, but the manager suddenly asks for a moment, warning them with a calm smile that everyone seemed to overlook the most important charge. He announces that it is time to build a real price of human life, officially setting the compensation for attempted murder at 10,000 gold yang. Hearing that insane new fee, the surrounding warriors freeze completely solid, because unlike the silver requested before, this massive demand is strictly in solid gold coins. That ridiculous sum blows way past the entire annual budget of Manhwa. And seeing through this setup, Hyunjung realizes the visitor came fully prepared to throw hands. A critical decision has to be made by the veteran at this exact second, with the master caught between draining every single clan vault or choosing all-out war. Making a mortal enemy out of such a terrifying organization carries catastrophic risk. Right as the other elder sneaks up beside the Grandmaster, quietly catching his attention. In a quick whisper, he shares how he tested the deck collector back at the front gates, using that easy conversation to convince the leader that the guy is just an imposter. Intrigued, Yanjiang widens his eyes as he listens to his companion's theory, agreeing that they cannot pay this fortune anyway and choosing to gamble everything on a fight. In a cold sweat, the commander builds up his resolve to drop the final attack order, barking at everyone to immediately assume the Plum Blossom Sword formation. Metallic clangs ring through the courtyard as dozens of warriors unsheathe their cold steel, moving in flawless harmony to lock down their combat positions around the intruders. Dragging their blades across the stone, they carve into the tiles while venting massive energy, leaving the collecting duo completely surrounded on all sides by elite combatants. A glowing crimson aura wraps around the sword of the led disciple, while Mac Raiwa warily tracks the fluid movements of their opponents, noting the red tassels hanging from their weapon hilts that reveal their rank. Taking in the details, she realizes that every single gar here belongs to the elite red division. Glowing petals sketch Manhwa's feared formation right into the open air, and a dense pink aura expands outward as the Grandmaster watches the execution with pride. The veteran regrets that his top-tier White Division masters are away on an external mission, since the swordsmen representing Manhwa's greatest strength are split into 3 distinct tiers, with the elite legions separated by the colors blue, red, and white. The legendary White Division warriors are genuine Grandmasters who far surpass the rest, and not having those elites around leaves the Grandmaster deeply frustrated during this clash. A colossal vortex of razor-sharp petals begins spinning with violent ferocity, but standing tall in the center of the storm, Kim is not bothered in the slightest by the pressure. Flashing a faint smirk, our manager just lets out an amused little scoff, playfully commenting that their final bill is about to get a whole lot more expensive. Enraged, the Grandmaster roars that even supreme overlords were forced to retreat before this technique, as the disciples charge in unison, thrusting their gleaming blades forward. Executing the first style of the art, they focus all their force into a single lethal point, with the concentrated beam screaming downward at high speed, aimed right for the kid's forehead. A blinding flash of light erupts the instant the strike impacts Kim's body, shockwaves tearing through the courtyard and shattering the surrounding stone tiles to dust. But instead of piercing their target, the attackers themselves get violently launched through the air, every single warrior crashing hard into the dirt after getting casually swatted away. Coughing violently, the disciples spit up blood, failing to comprehend what just happened, while the leader of Manhwa stands with his jaw wide open in utter disbelief. Right before his eyes, he can barely accept that his ultimate plan failed this miserably, since a formation designed to subdue absolute monsters was shattered without an ounce of effort. A harsh dose of reality strikes the old man as he realizes this collector is no fake, and that this guy called Manager Kim possesses truly incomprehensible power. He is a genuine beast who crawled straight out of the legendary Continental Bank, sending the panicked Grandmaster into a frenzy, screaming at his men to get up and reform the barrier. At the top of his lungs, he demands full power, warning that the entire sect will fall if this man walks free. So leaping into the air, the furious disciples attempt another desperate assault. Completely chill, the collector simply takes a deep breath as he watches the charge incoming, raising his palm while warning that he is about to charge an extra service fee on these clients. Falling petals drift down, flashing back to a quiet chat they had along the mountain road, back before they arrived when the assistant was reviewing the numbers on her abacus. She had asked what exact amount they were planning to squeeze from this prestigious clan, but glancing over, Kim called the girl out to talk about a totally different topic. The young manager asked how much she thought a human life was actually worth, casually suggesting they demand 100,000 gold coins to compensate for the assassination attempt. Stunned, the girl replied that such a massive fortune could literally buy out an entire sect. So rubbing his chin, the generous boss proposed giving them a massive discount down to 10,000 gold coins. The assistant realized right then that he had calculated this entire outcome from the very beginning. In continuing their walk, she strongly doubted the sect masters would ever pay up peacefully. Laughing it off, the manager promised that if they refused, they would just repossess something far better, leaving the terrified girl wondering if he planned to drain the internal chi of every single master. Doing something that crazy would instantly make him the #1 public enemy of the martial realm. But under the moonlight, Kim asked if she knew what the true treasure of this clan actually was. He assured her that their real secret was neither raw golds nor their signature sword arts, because the greatest asset they accumulated over centuries was time itself, alongside an ancient relic capable of defying all natural logic. Back in the present, an enormous pillar of energy detonates right in the center of the courtyard, as the warriors trigger the second form of their sword art, entering a frenzied combat dance. Flicking their blades with blinding speed, they unleash hundreds of concentrated energy slashes, beams of crimson light cutting through the darkness straight toward the debt collector. The sheer force of the assault erects a shining wall of ki that stretches toward the heavens, splintering wooden pillars and roof tiles as the warriors maintain their relentless barrage. Even with razor-sharp edges flying from every angle, Kim weaves through the chaos with total grace, weeping through the air and gliding between the swords without taking a single scratch. Multiple spinning slashes slice empty air without ever grazing his robes, while dozens of descending light beams crash down in a desperate bid to tag him at all costs. A massive spiral of energy churns furiously, grinding the stone ground to dust, and the violent maelstrom tears floor tiles apart during the synchronized offensive. Watching him dodge everything with zero effort, leader Hyunjung breaks into a cold sweat, unable to believe that anyone could slip through their legendary technique like it was child's play. Panicking, he orders the remaining guards to charge in and stall for more time. And fueled by raw loyalty, the guards swear to fight to the death for Manhwa. A swarm of disciples rushes forward with drawn blades to encircle the intruder, but glancing over his shoulder, Kim maintains an icy, undisturbed poker face. Taking one solid step forward, our MC prepares to deliver his counterattack, the sheer force of his footstep cracking the bedrock and blasting the oncoming fighters backwards. Boulders go airborne as the martial artists get flung into the sky with zero control. Mid-air, disciples panicking in pure disbelief as their combined strike gets utterly negated. Standing tall with his hands tucked behind his back, our guy waits for the dust to settle, before extending his arm with pinpoint precision to gather his immense power. A vortex of pure, concentrated chi swirls inside his open palm, primed for release, and a massive blast of compressed air erupts from Kim's hand straight toward his enemies. Heavy chunks of stone are launched like cannonballs at the charging combatants, with one swordsman widening his eyes in pure terror as a massive rock barrels toward him. The brutal impact smashes right into the man's face with bone-crushing force, sending teeth flying through the air as his body gets hurled backward. Knocked out cold, the disciple crashes onto the stone courtyard. While moving like a phantom, the debt collector engages the remaining warriors without skipping a beat. Simultaneous precision strikes land on the guards attempting to hold the perimeter. While watching the whole beat down in total serenity, the assistant stands motionless in the back. Battle winds ruffle the girl's hair as she places absolute faith in her boss's unmatched strength. And in mere seconds, every single Manhwa swordsman lies beaten and folded on the ground. Kim mocks the clan's weakness for sending green rookies straight into a slaughter, until sensing a heavy shift in the atmosphere he looks up toward the sky. A colossal blossom of crimson energy blooms across the sky in the technique's third form, and smiling at the spectacle, the manager realizes this was the hidden trump card they were saving. Slowly, the young man raises his right arm straight toward the titanic energy blade, as a radiant golden glow of pure divine chi wraps around his open palm. With his bare hand, he catches the massive sword strike as if it were a solid object, his silhouette gripping the giant blade of pure energy right in front of the entire sect. The leader of Manhwa drops his jaw in pure, unadulterated terror, screaming in disbelief at how a mere human could catch their sacred sword art with an unprotected hand. Keeping a piercing, lethal glare, Kim gets ready to return the favor, swinging his arm with explosive power to unleash a devastating golden slash. The beam of energy rips through the magical formation in the sky, cleaving the grand blossom clean in half, making every grandmaster shriek in despair as their greatest pride gets torn to shreds. Paralyzed with disbelief, the remaining warriors watch the blinding light show without reacting, as a colossal explosion of light and glowing petals completely obliterates what was left of the technique. Showers of shimmering petals rain down around the manager's feet on the cracked ground. While wielding that golden radiance, Kim stands completely unharmed without a speck of dust on him. Turning his back to the courtyard, he admires the sheer destruction left behind by his counter-strike, before dropping his combat stance and turning his full attention back to the sect leader. All around, dozens of disciples groan in agony across the broken stone floor, coughing up blood as they try to push themselves up without any strength left to fight. Standing alone amidst the ruins, Master Hyunjung trembles before the unfolding disaster, completely unable to accept that the legendary formation of his ancestors was utterly demolished. Sweating in terror, the old man wonders what kind of absolute monster commands this much internal energy. With a crisp metallic hum, Kim dissipates the golden blade from his grasp, strolling forward calmly while announcing that they can finally have a civilized conversation. Halting right in front of the veteran, the young man radiates an overwhelming, suffocating presence, asking with an ironic smirk if they can now get down to settling the bill. Gritting his teeth in raw humiliation, Hyunjong struggles to contain the boiling fury in his chest, shutting his eyes as the crushing weight of total defeat obliterates his pride. Absolute dread grips his features as he realizes the inescapable dead end he led his clan into, silently questioning if picking a fight was the absolute worst mistake of his entire life. Remembering the start of the negotiation, the master bitterly regrets not paying the initial debt, since simply handing over the indebted junior would have saved Manhwa from this humiliating massacre. Looking at the fallen bodies of his disciples, the leader wonders if destiny could have turned out differently. Until letting out a slow sigh, Kim breaks the suffocating silence of the moment. The manager replies that maybe things could have changed, but Manhwa was never going to fold easily, pointing out that this proud sect would never make a different choice, just like 30 years ago. Flabbergasted by those words, the old master stares at the collector with bulging eyes, as vivid flashbacks of that past tragedy flood the mind of the elder who survived it. A horrifying realization hits the Grandmaster as he sees that this entire event was meticulously calculated, with our deck collector pulling all the strings from the very moment he lent those initial coins. Trapping the reckless junior in endless debt was merely the first piece of his twisted game, using the official debt collection as the ultimate excuse to step foot on the clan's sacred sanctuary. Demanding an impossible compensation fee naturally forced the proud martial artists to draw their steel, with every calculated step backing the sect into a corner until total conflict became unavoidable. Letting out a bitter, self-deprecating chuckle, Hyunjong finally sees the trap he walked into, the veteran admitting that Manhwa never had a real choice in the matter from the start. Curious, he asks why an entity blessed with this much absurd power needed to orchestrate such an elaborate play. Locking eyes with the elder, the manager keeps a completely firm, unyielding expression, his eyes radiating a cold, calculating resolve that chills the defeated leader to the bone. In the brutal martial world, the law of the jungle usually dictates the balance of power, and, with Kim's godly strength, he easily could have stormed the gates and taken whatever he wanted by force. Not a single soul in this entire mountain range could have stopped the intruder's will. Yet despite holding all that power, our MC chose to handle business through a completely different method. He established a legally binding debt and patiently waited for his targets to swing first, explaining that if the strong rob the weak without rules, the entire world collapses into pure anarchy. Whenever lawless tyranny rules the land, innocent commoners always suffer the worst consequences, leaving the veteran completely speechless before the young man's surprising philosophy. Laughing out loud, Kim jokes that his bank is not staffed by common highway bandits, while the annoyed master thinks to himself that this guy acted like the biggest crook in history. Switching topics, the manager instructs his assistant to recalculate the final balance with all added surcharges, and prompt as ever, the girl begins clacking the wooden beads of her abacus before the crowd. The clicking sound of the abacus makes the Grandmaster's heart pound in sheer anxiety, because drawing their blades and losing the brawl sent the final bill skyrocketing into outer space. Pushing up her glasses, the assistant formally announces that the new balance is 50,000 gold coins. Hearing that astronomical number, the surrounding elders spiral into complete and total hysteria, while Hyunjong stutters in terror, stating that the sect does not possess such an absurd mountain of gold. Sympathetic, the young manager nods that paying all that cash up front is indeed pretty tough, explaining that for overburdened clients, the bank always provides two distinct alternatives. Flashing a sinister grin, our guy reveals that option 1 is paying with their own bodies, which means he will personally drain every single drop of internal chi from every swordsman who attacked him. Sprawled on the stone tiles, the disciples swallow hard upon hearing that horrifying punishment. While trembling, the leader asks what the second option for settling the debt would be. The other choice is handing over a physical asset worth 50,000 gold coins, leading the frantic master to ask if he wants their sacred manuals while begging for mercy. Letting out a bored sigh, Kim replies that he refuses martial manuals to avoid messy rumors, before instructing his assistant to flip over to the final page of the collection ledger. Presenting the parchment, the young woman reveals the detailed drawing of an ancient sword, with the document pointing directly to the yellow dragon sword of the Jew clan. Upon seeing the illustration, Hyunjong stammers, trying to play dumb and act clueless, but Kim tells the old man to cut the nonsense and demands the imperial blade locked away on the peak. Terrified, the leader cannot fathom how this outsider uncovered a secret buried for 30 long years, as the collector offers to clear the entire 50,000 gold debt in exchange for that single divine weapon. Dropping to his knees, the veteran begs to hand over literally any other sacred relic stored in the vault. But snapping his ledger shut, the manager firmly declares that this is his final offer. With silence hanging heavy over the courtyard, the young man tells the master to choose the fate of Manhwa, and bowing his head, the leader understands there is zero escape from this man's demands. Seeing through the grand scheme, the veteran realizes that Kim's true objective was always that very blade. Dejected, the leader of Manhwa calls out to his fellow elder, ordering him to bring out the yellow dragon sword of the Jew clan without delay. Moments later, the elder places the sacred heirloom directly into the young collector's hands, and sliding the blade slightly from its scabbard, Kim inspects the brilliant metallic sheen of the steel. A heavy silence falls over the pavilion, as our guy carefully inspects every inch of the masterpiece, the ancient sword vibrating with raw resonance as it recognizes the hand of its new master. Staring at his own reflection in the polished steel, the manager confirms the weapon's authenticity, a look of pure joy and satisfaction spreading across his youthful face. Bowing with the utmost manners, Kim offers his thanks and officially declares the debt fully settled. Handing over his business card, the man introduces himself and his assistant once more, noting with a wide grin that the company looks forward to doing business with them again in the future. Shattered wood and broken boulders blanket the ruined courtyard of the humiliated sect, where leader Hyunjong takes a stiff, solemn stance before all gathered disciples. Holding the bank's business card, the old master reflects on the bitter tragedy they just endured, and in a heavy, commanding voice, he announces a crucial decree for the future of Manhwa. The young warriors widen their eyes in horror upon hearing their supreme leader's proclamation, declaring that the sect will lock its gates and cut all contact with the outside world for 10 whole years. An atmosphere of deep mourning and despair settles among the gathered martial artists, tears streaming down the cheeks of the disciples who are inconsolable over the news. Bitter weeping echoes across the grounds as the Taoists mourn the utter collapse of their pride, while plum blossom petals drift down over the dust-stained stone tiles. Looking up at the open sky, the commander locks away the memory of this bitter day, softly muttering that the mountain's sacred blossoms have finally entered their season of decay. And just like that, another dark chapter wraps up in the history of the ancient temple. Far away from the mountains, bustling city lanterns light up a lively festive night, where nimble fingers pluck the strings of a traditional zither inside a crowded tavern. A beautiful entertainer plays gracefully to delight the wealthy patrons in the dining hall, with rowdy men drinking and laughing merrily alongside their female companions, cheering loudly as they order more jars of sweet wine to keep the wild party going. Over in a quiet private booth, a lone swordsman enjoys his drink in complete silence, when an attractive courtesan glides over, asking with a smile if the young gentleman is drinking alone. The woman kindly offers to refill the mysterious warrior's cup, and accepting the courtesy with a calm gaze, the man thanks her for the pleasant gesture. Pouring the wine, the woman uses the close contact to secretly slip him a confidential message. She whispers in his ear that Manhwa has officially declared the total closure of its gates. And hearing the news, the warrior narrows his eyes in absolute astonishment. He wonders why on earth such a mighty clan would lock themselves away for 10 whole years, while the woman explains that 0 rumors leaked from the peak and leaving is strictly forbidden. Worried, she asks if their syndicate should dispatch more scouts to dig deeper into the mystery, since that man is none other than Baek Ilmyeong, the supreme leader of the influential Housek. Thinking it over, he knows that sealing their gates for a decade means giving up all their power, and not even his sect's legendary intelligence network could uncover what went down in there. When the courtesan suggests looking into local merchants, the master orders her to drop the case entirely, demanding that every scrap of information regarding the incident be erased immediately. Confused, the girl asks why he would throw away such a profitable piece of intel for business, but Baek Ilmyeong firmly replies that there are things in this world way scarier than money. Accepting the order without asking another question, the woman respectfully steps away from the table, bowing gracefully to take her leave and wishing her lord a peaceful night. Left alone in the private booth, the commander watches the spy depart while finishing his drink, a subtle grin spreading across his face as he recalls a certain terrifying figure from his past. He chuckles to himself, thinking that debt collector is a complete and utter madman, because while he expected a bold move, he never imagined the total downfall of Manhwa. Rolling up his long sleeve, the man exposes his own arm under the dim tavern light, revealing a deep, mangled scar that stretches across his entire forearm. Baek Ilmyeong was always a cautious man, but he made one single mistake back in the day. having tried to challenge that bank collector on one chaotic, fateful night. That clash ended in total humiliation when Kim grabbed his arm with monstrous strength, and stepping to that absolute monster was easily the worst decision of his entire martial life. That permanent scar served as a permanent reminder about the true terrors lurking in the world. So letting out a curious sigh, the leader considers paying a visit to his old acquaintance, standing up and deciding to find out for himself how the manager brought Manhwa to its knees. The next morning, assistant Mak Rihao enjoys a sunny day at a cozy local tea house, where steaming teapots and traditional sweets sit neatly on the round wooden table. Sitting all by herself, the girl lets out a relieved sigh, soaking in a rare moment of peace, since it had been ages since she enjoyed such a calm, relaxing morning, especially after back-to-back missions against the demonic cult, and Manhwa left her completely drained. Knowing Kim stepped out to handle some business, she savors the soothing floral scent of her tea, sipping quietly by the window while enjoying the refreshing breeze blowing from outside. Heavy, arrogant footsteps shatter the quiet, turning heads throughout the establishment, as a young nobleman, flanked by two smug bodyguards, stops right beside her table. With a sleazy grin, the rich kid asks if a gorgeous lady gets bored sitting all alone, leaning in close in a pushy attempt to grab the girl's attention. Turning her head away coldly, the assistant shows zero interest in the stranger, which only makes the young lord more captivated as he checks out her beauty up close. Completely entranced by her looks, he inches closer with bolder, creepier intentions. But when the guy pushes her to keep him company, the girl shoots him down immediately. Holding a steady posture, she is not fazed in the slightest by these annoying intruders, making an angry guard bark that she is speaking to the proud young master of the Hyo clan. Rolling her eyes in pure annoyance, Riwa tells them to get lost right this instant. And though young master Hyuk Sozung thinks his family name makes him untouchable, she tells him to back off. Pure rage twists the nobleman's face upon being treated like literal dirt, snarling that no woman in this entire province has ever dared to disrespect him like this. He violently slams his open palm down against the wooden table, leaning right over the girl and declaring that she's gonna spend time with him whether she likes it or not. But before he can lay a single finger on her, a firm hand locks onto the bully's wrist with crushing grip, and feeling his bones getting pulverized, the young master lets out a shriek of pure agony. A calm voice chimes in from behind, reminding him that the lady made it crystal clear she is not interested, leaving the shocked goons trying to act tough, asking if this stranger even knows who he is messing with. Chuckling mockingly, Baek Il-myung replies that he knows all about that trashy clan's reputation, roasting their pathetic combat level and reminding them that their patriarch barely holds any real power. Staring right into the kid's eyes, the sect leader asks if he got a single detail wrong, leaving the terrified heir realizing the man standing in front of him is an absolute beast. Shivering in utter dread, the trio of bullies scrambles out of the tea house while cursing under their breath, and with zero hesitation, Baek Il-myung pulls up a chair and sits right across from the assistant. Popping a sweet into his mouth, the visitor greets the girl with uncanny friendliness. While looking at him in confusion, she asks how this complete stranger even knows who she is. Laughing, he apologizes, explaining that he researched her so much he already feels like a close, personal friend, which makes the girl worry about who this mysterious guy could be while her manager is away. With a sharp gaze, the master reveals he knows she is the second daughter of the prestigious Makri clan, sharing his intel that the young lady joined the Continental Bank about 1 year ago. He casually name-drops the Heavenly Demon Energy Collection in the recent lockdown of Manhwa, claiming that he knows every single step she took and meal she ate across the entire country. Suspicious, the assistant demands to know who he is to possess such confidential information, and flashing a smirk, the visitor reveals that he's the supreme master of the legendary house sect. The girl instantly recognizes the name as the greatest intelligence and spy network on the continent, curiously wondering what such a legendary figure could possibly want from her right now. Munching on a snack, the leader simply replies that he has zero interest in asking for anything, leaving the girl completely baffled as to why he's being so secretive, silently doubting anyone who stalked her entire schedule just to claim they want nothing. But when she tries to press the matter, the master starts holding back his laughter, bursting into a loud chuckle that leaves the assistant even more lost, before finally dropping the bomb that he is also an employee of the Continental Bank and her senior colleague. Apologizing for the prank, he warmly refers to her as his fellow co-worker, leaving her completely mind-blown as she processes having the king of spies as her company senior. Cracking up at the scene, the man jokes that her shocked expression is utterly priceless, leading the girl to ask if all those detailed client reports came directly from his network. Confirming her hunch, the leader explains that scouting out indebted targets is his exact job, with his primary role being tracking down who needs quick cash and who possesses godly treasures. Glancing at the window, the young woman finally understands how the manager found his target so easily, flashing back to memories of the broke heavenly demon desperate for silver coins, and the gambling addict Manhwa disciple borrowing endless bags of cash from her boss. A thoughtful silence washes over the girl as she recalls her own past, remembering how her once proud noble family also collapsed into ruin due to foolish ambitions. Noticing his junior looking quiet, the veteran master decides to switch gears, welcoming her with open arms and offering to answer any other questions the rookie might have. Curious, the assistant starts pondering which grand mystery she actually wants to solve, realizing that the true identity of Manager Kim is the absolute biggest question on her mind. She instantly gives up on asking her boss directly, knowing he never spills a word about himself. But a sudden spark of inspiration makes the girl's eyes light up with a fresh idea. Seizing the golden opportunity, she asks if the leader of the house sect knows the real truth about Kim, wanting to understand where that godlike strength comes from and what went down 30 years ago. Crossing his arms, the veteran admits that the manager is indeed an enigma wrapped in mystery, leaning in close as the master spy promises to share a massive secret in private. But just as he leans in to whisper the answer, an overwhelming presence appears right behind the table, and sporting a terrifyingly cheerful smile, Manager Kim himself pops up right next to the man's ear. The master spy instantly freezes, solid, cold sweat pouring down his terrified face, as extreme panic completely locks up the veteran's quivering lips. Swallowing hard, the man desperately tries to play off the dread of getting caught red-handed, jumping to his feet and greeting his superior while forcing out a super fake, friendly laugh. Resting his hand on the newly acquired sacred sword, Kim glares at his colleague with piercing eyes, playfully mocking the spy's excessive interest in his assistant's daily schedule. Beck jokes back, claiming that praise from the manager is worth way more than silver coins, before Kim shifts the focus back to business, warning that Manhwa's isolation will trigger massive shockwaves. The house sect leader replies that his network is already working overtime to suppress the rumors, but to the spy's absolute shock, the manager strictly orders him not to hide a single thing. Instead of covering it up, Kim demands that rumors of their downfall be blasted across the continent, since the sealing of the mountain is a monumental event destined to shake the entire martial world. Worried, the master spy ponders the utter chaos this earth-shattering news will unleash in the region, until a light bulb suddenly goes off in Baek's head as he realizes the grand strategy behind the command. Bursting into loud laughter at the table, the man gets a kick out of the collector's sheer audacity, admitting that the manager becomes a more terrifying monster with every passing day. Yet despite his humorous tone, his words carry an undercurrent of genuine dread, seeing that Kim's true plan is using Manhwa's disgrace as live bait to hook even bigger fish. Only someone wielding absolute power would ever have the guts to pull off such a daring scheme. And taking a deep breath, the master concludes that the collector knows zero limits to his ambition. Looking at the dark-robed man, he sees an entity capable of defying the entire martial realm, with his gut telling him that Kim plans to collect debts from every single major sect out there. Far from the tea house, the halls of Manhwa remain dead silent under the afternoon sun, where countless curious onlookers and martial artists gather outside the locked main gates. One of the guards stationed at the entrance bluntly tells everyone to turn around and leave, but despite the lockdown order, continuous waves of visitors keep arriving by the hour. Astonished whispers spread among the crowd, who find it nearly impossible to believe the wild news, as gossips and travelers from every corner trek up the peak, searching for the real truth. Getting zero answers, the public is forced to turn back before the bolted wooden gates. While sick and tired of turning people away, the gate guards let out a heavy sigh of exhaustion. The tapping sound of a wooden cane hitting the dirt road suddenly catches their attention, and looking down the path, the sentry spots a lone figure slowly making his way up. An old beggar with a scruffy white beard and tattered rags walks steadily toward the entrance, making the annoyed guard shout that the sect is closed and cannot offer any spare change today. The elderly wanderer gazes upon the grand entrance with a deep contemplative look, muttering about the clan's sudden isolation as if he already grasps the truth behind it. Turning right around, the old man decides to head back down the dirt path without pressing further, taking slow, rhythmic steps as he walks away from the mountain's sacred borders. With a razor-sharp glint in his eye, he confirms to himself that the rumors of their downfall were totally real. Meanwhile, back at the tea house, the discussion about bank operations rolls right along, with Kim sipping his drink and asking Baek how things are running over at company headquarters. The spy replies that the Vault Guardian is handling everything, though Kim warns him to keep a close eye on the man, Overhearing the conversation, the assistant widens her eyes in pure astonishment, asking with great intrigue if the Continental Bank actually possesses a physical headquarters. Bake chuckles in amusement upon realizing the new recruit has never visited the main base, which makes the girl pout after feeling left out of the loop regarding their hideout. Instantly turning to her boss, she begs for a chance to finally go see it, and holding his teacup steady, Kim asks if she truly wants to see the main headquarters. Hyped up, the girl responds with a massive smile, saying she would love nothing more than to make the trip. So the manager tells Beck to get everything ready so all three of them can travel to headquarters together. Night falls once more over the traditional rooftops of the isolated Mount Hua sect, where the high wooden ceiling mirrors the heavy loneliness of the pitch-black hall. Sitting alone on the floor, leader Hyunjong stares blankly at the flickering flame of a tiny candle, profound sorrow completely overwhelming the thoughts of the mountain's supreme figure. He silently weeps over seeing such a horrific tragedy repeat itself in his own lifetime, because even without legendary combat strength, the leader always poured his entire heart into his clan. His greatest wish was always to protect his juniors and restore their past glory, spending years of hard work just to ensure that brutal history would never happen again. Yet before the terrifying might of the bank, his sect proved as fragile as a candle in a storm, the tiny flame wavering on the table as wax melts into the darkness of the chamber. A mocking voice suddenly echoes from the shadows, commenting on the clan's utterly pathetic state, as a mysterious old beggar appears sitting inside the dark room calling out the leader's name. Startled, Hyunjong leaps to his feet and immediately recognizes the legendary drunken beggar. The wanderer laughing dryly that he was denied spare change earlier, but gets recognized right away at night. Hyunjong apologizes for the locked gates and asks the purpose behind the beggar's visit, with the elder stating that shutting the mountain down for 10 whole years is bound to draw every eye in the world. Keeping silent, the sect leader shuts his eyes, feeling the suffocating weight behind that statement, as the elderly wanderer presses on to uncover the truth behind the mystery. Without beating around the bush, the visitor demands to know who was responsible for bringing down Mount Hua, but the Grand Master remains dead silent, his face shrouded in dark shadows. Flashbacks of the recent massacre flood his thoughts, showing his elite warriors getting launched through the air, remembering with sheer terror the exact second their sacred sword formation was cleaved in half. Cold sweat drips down his forehead as he relives the absolute humiliation of that beatdown, prompting the old beggar to ask why he stubbornly refuses to utter a single word. Turning his back to the guest, the commander remains completely resolute in his silence, deciding that he will not speak a single syllable about what actually happened. Deep down, he genuinely fears that speaking Kim's name might summon the monster back to destroy them all. An irrational dread having rooted itself deep into the core of the leader's soul, the wanderer stares down his old friend with a piercing, analytical gaze, tapping his bamboo staff against the wooden floorboards to shatter the eerie silence of the hall. The Grand Master flinches slightly at the sharp echo reverberating across the dark tiles, and getting the message, the beggar says he does not have to talk if he has personal reasons to stay quiet. Closing his eyes in sorrow, the leader thanks his old friend for the understanding, lamenting that he cannot escort the guest all the way to the temple exit, and wishing the elders safe travels. The veteran watches the wanderer take his leave. Outside, cherry blossoms continue to drift softly beneath the midnight moon, as the old wanderer makes his way down the deserted mountain trail using his trusty staff. In all of his 85 years of life, he always prided himself on uncovering every secret under the sun. So, knowing that someone completely silenced the Grand Mount Hua sect triggers his burning curiosity. Halting right in the middle of the trail, the old master calls out for his dog-beating squad, and swift rustling instantly shakes the branches of the flowering trees lining the path. Multiple agile shadows drop from the canopy, landing silently upon the dirt, with elite agents from the beggar sect standing at the ready to receive their marching orders. The veteran leader demands a full-scale investigation into everything that went down on the peak, and the squad captain promises they will find out down to what the Taoist ate for dinner last night. In a fraction of a second, the scouts scatter in all directions through the dark forest. While flashing a sinister grin, the old man declares that nobody can ever hide the truth from him. His eyes gleam in the shadows, swearing to unmask whoever is responsible for breaking Mount Hua. By daybreak, lively commotion takes over the busy streets of Huayin County, though the local marketplace routine feels completely off compared to normal this morning. Across every alley and street corner, numerous figures dressed in ragged clothes suddenly pop up, with scouts disguised as common beggars taking strategic positions all around the shops. Two local stall owners chat, finding the massive influx of beggars in the area super weird. As one of the wanderers approaches a fruit stall, begging for a copper coin and charity, Grumbling about the morning hassle, the old merchant reluctantly digs through his pockets, tossing a single coin and telling the beggar not to get in the way of his business. Bowing repeatedly in thanks, the disguised scout offers to say a prayer of good fortune in return, while the vendor notes his only real relief was the sudden disappearance of the Venom Snake faction. He hopes those dangerous gangsters never return to extort protection money again. And hearing that story, the spy recognizes the gang that ran all the local gambling dens. Pressing for more details, he learns that the thugs fled in the middle of the night completely battered, leading the agent to instantly conclude that this gang's beatdown is directly tied to Manhwa. Offering one final bow, the fake beggar promises to pray that peace remains in the market, quickly slipping away to deliver this crucial lead straight to his comrades. Glancing over, the stall owner notices an elegant, imposing presence walking up, as a graceful courtesan glides straight toward the exact same vegetable stall. It is none other than the house-sex spy carrying out direct orders from her Grand Master. Her memories flashing back to the secret meeting that took place in the tavern the previous night. She was tasked with manipulating the flow of information spreading across the entire territory, checking to see if the breadcrumb trail about the snake gang was successfully fed to the target. Scoffing with amusement, she mocks the beggar sect for foolishly believing they control all information, since the house sect proves its dominance by pulling their rival strings from the very start. Turning her back, the young woman walks away satisfied while the merchants pretend to work, determined to prove which syndicate truly rules the criminal underworld. By sunset, golden light coats the mountain peaks across a desolate landscape, where in the middle of a clearing, the beggar squad surrounds two surviving thugs from the snake gang. Resting his staff on his shoulder, the captain mocks the runaways who tried hiding out in the brush. While on their knees, the gangsters beg for their lives, swearing they know nothing. The scout demands to know why the two of them did not flee alongside the rest of their gang. And terrified, the pair confesses that they were brutally beaten by a mysterious man and woman. They reveal that the duo was loaded with cash and heading straight toward Shenzhou. While sitting on a boulder in the back, the old drunken beggar listens carefully to every confession. The veteran takes a swig from his gourd, analyzing the prisoner's story, realizing that while a wealthy couple initially seemed unrelated to the locked temple, their sudden appearance lined up perfectly with the immediate shutdown of Manhwa's gates. The elder concludes that this many coincidences can only point to their real targets, meaning the outsiders who crushed the snake gang were the exact ones who silenced Manhwa. Smirking with malice, the old master realizes he is hunting a golden goose, ordering the squad without delay to march toward Shangzhou right this second. The captain asks if the Grand Elder will also be joining the squad on this hunt, and reflecting on the challenge, the master notes that defeating Manhwa requires a living legend. Even weakened, breaking their sacred formation would demand a strength of the world's absolute top monsters. So because of that immense danger, he declares he must assemble hunting dogs of equal caliber. The squad captain swallows hard as he realizes the sheer scale of the battle ahead, before the master strides down the road, while his subordinates initiate the full pursuit. Melting into the shadows, the old man warns that he will show zero mercy to whoever broke their allied sect. And flashing a bloodthirsty glare, the feared beggar Chui swears to tear these intruders limb from limb. Far from there, a lone carriage travels along a winding dirt road between rolling hills, its wooden wheels turning smoothly while kicking up faint dust along the trail. Driven by Baek Il-myung, the carriage carries the group toward their newest destination. While inside the cabin, the young assistant leans forward, excitedly calling out to the driver. Curious, Makrihua fires off question after question about the size and hustle of company headquarters, wanting to know how many employees actually work there besides her own manager. Chuckling at her hyperactivity, the driver tells the girl to take a breath before his ears fall off. While looking out the window, she admits she honestly thought the bank existed only in name. Manager Kim cuts the chatter short, telling his assistant to pipe down and act like an adult, which makes her grumble under her breath, calling her boss an unbearable stingy penny pincher. Green scenery flashes by outside under the crisp morning sun, until Kim's eyes suddenly turn dead serious as he scans the surrounding woods. In complete silence, the debt collector begins tallying every hidden presence closing in through the trees, with 10 beggars sect warriors sprinting under cover to encircle the carriage. Racking up his mental count, the man pinpoints exactly 10 pursuers lurking in the brush, coldly concluding that the dog-beating squad is officially breathing down their necks. Right then, the assistant spots something unexpected out the window and gasps in excitement, noticing a roadside dumpling stall and begging to pull over for a quick snack break. The driver jokes that the girl lives a cushy life, but the manager gives the green light to pull over, and super hyped. Mockery hops right out of the carriage to pick out some food. At the counter, she chats up the vendor asking about the meat and vegetable fillings. While back in the carriage, Bake asks if his boss picked up the sour scent of the beggar's sect. Kim confirms the scouts are on them, mentioning that he plans to leave an easy trail to follow. Stepping down from the carriage, the collector walks over as his assistant brings back the steaming food. The girl asking which dumpling flavor her boss prefers to eat right now. The young man replies that he usually prefers vegetables, but today he is going with meat, loudly boasting that he earned the right to feast on meat after closing such a massive deal. A beggar sitting in the corner of the village listens to that line with intense focus, curiously wondering if this big deal is directly connected to the wild Manhwa rumors. Beck shouts from the driver's seat demanding meat dumplings to celebrate their grand victory at Manhwa, while the manager teases his buddy, reminding him that he let the snake gang runners slip away. Hearing both key names dropped out loud, the undercover spy confirms he found the exact targets. And clocking the presence of a third traveler, the beggar slowly pushes himself off the wall, blending smoothly into the bustling crowd. The informant slips away to relay the updates. While out of the corner of his eye, Kim flashes a satisfied smirk, seeing that his bait works like a charm. Rising above the walls of Zhengzhou, the colossal fortress of the Marine Alliance towers under the blazing sun, its titanic gates safeguarding the headquarters that governs the entire martial order. 100 years ago, the demonic cult nearly swallowed the entire continent with its Shadow Legion, forcing the great Orthodox sects to unite for the very first time and form this grand alliance. Ever since that sacred oath, this fortress became the true heart and pillar of the martial realm, housing both alliance soldiers and elite forces dispatched by the 9 great sects. The clashing sound of training blades echoes far beyond the towering stone ramparts, where sentries guarding the gate find the lonely arrival of an old wanderer rather odd. Recognizing the legendary figure, they ask what brings the renowned drunken beggar to their gates. And taking another swig of wine, the elder demands to know where the Manhwa delegation is stationed. The guard answers promptly, stating that the group is staying at the Red Lotus Pavilion. So ordering the men to clear the way, the old grandmaster steps into the fortress grounds. Stomping forward in his battered straw sandals, the old man clicks his tongue in disgust, thinking to himself that even the Alliance gatekeepers have lost the fierce warrior spirit of the past. An eerie gust of wind sweeps across the courtyard, kicking up dust between the guard pavilions. And looking at the worn Alliance banner, the wanderer wonders just how long this fragile peace will even last. Ahead, the Red Lotus Pavilion showcases blooming gardens and tranquil koi ponds all around. Inside the luxurious hall, the entire room is soaked in the heavy stench of alcohol, with overturned wine jugs littering the floor while loud, drunken laughter fills the air. Lounging comfortably, Master Hyunjin of the White Plum Blossom Division yells for another round of drinks. While holding a fresh bottle, young Chungrang lets out a long, exhausted sigh. The martial nephew complains that they spend every single day getting wasted instead of taking on missions, but laughing off the concern, veteran Hyeonam replies that the Alliance did not invite them here to work. Chi Ong-ring shakes his head at his uncle's slack behavior, while the rest of the warriors keep laughing, since the emblem stitched onto their robes represents the absolute peak elite strength of Manhwa. Even with their sect sealed off, these White Division masters show zero concern, because thanks to the beggar sect's tight information blackout, news of the clan's downfall had not reached them yet. Bare footsteps and the sharp thud of a wooden cane suddenly shatter the swordsman's drunken singing, and looking toward the doorway, the junior disciple senses a terrifying presence closing in. Cracks of pure chi leak through the wooden doors, announcing the arrival of a formidable monster, with Chungrang detecting a crushing pressure that dwarfs the strength of every grandmaster in the room. A violent chill races down the young warrior's spine under that suffocating aura, right as the visitor slams his staff against the floor, blasting a massive shockwave through the hall. The sudden gust of wind flips wine cups into the air, knocking every single fighter flat on the ground. And shell-shocked, the drunken masters sober up in an instant under that overwhelming power. In a stern voice, the old beggar asks if they finally managed to clear the booze from their heads, leaving the Manhwa members widening their eyes in utter terror as they recognize the intruder. Pissed off by the interruption, Hyunjin gets to his feet, barking that such disrespect will not be tolerated. But stepping forward, the old beggar scolds the shameful behavior of every warrior in the room. He bluntly drops the bomb that while they were drowning in wine, their own sect locked its mountain gates. An unexpected revelation that leaves every swordsman completely stunned and at a total loss for words. A blazing purple flame of internal chi explodes around Hyunjin's body in pure fury, with the enraged warrior asking if the old man has gone completely senile to cook up such a ridiculous lie. He threatens to slaughter the beggar on the spot if this turns out to be a sick joke against their clan. But the drunken beggar snaps back, saying he would never waste his breath telling fairy tales to fools. Turning his back, the elder pretends to walk away, making the group even more frantic. And terrified by the deadly seriousness in his voice, Hyunjin screams for the Grandmaster to wait. The wanderer halts his stride right before crossing the threshold of the pavilion, glancing over his shoulder to observe the complete chaos gripping the elite swordsman. And with an ironic smirk hidden beneath his beard, he realizes his little scheme worked like a charm. The master mockingly comments that their faces finally look nice and sober. While sweating buckets, Hyunjin practically begs the elder to explain every single detail. Taking another swig from his gourd, the old man spins his twisted version of the truth, claiming that a mysterious man and woman stormed the peak and silenced the entire sect. In disbelief, the warrior shouts that their sacred sword formation could never be defeated. But the beggar states the obvious, pointing out that if the gates are sealed, the formation was clearly crushed. Asked why the news took so long to arrive, the old man lies, saying the intruders covered it all up, when in reality, the entire story was a fabrication designed by the beggar to manipulate these masters. He used his own syndicate of beggars to intercept the rumors before they could reach the alliance. And chuckling, the elder suggests this delay actually gives their squad the ultimate golden opportunity. The old man eggs the swordsman on to claim their bloody revenge before the rest of the world finds out, since his true goal is using the fury of the white plum blossoms as his personal hunting dogs. Gritting his teeth in pure hatred, Hyunjin feels his blood boil over his sect's humiliation, stepping forward and demanding the beggar reveal the names of the culprits right this instant. The master swears he will hunt down the perpetrators with his bare hands and tear off their heads. While keeping his cool, the old beggar watches blind rage completely consume the swordsman's heart. Slowly sipping his wine, the wanderer celebrates the flawless execution of his setup, mentally noting with deep satisfaction that the elite warriors took the bait, hook, line, and sinker. A hesitant voice suddenly breaks through the cries for vengeance from the back of the pavilion, as young Cheongryong steps into the center of the hall, warning his uncles that they cannot do this. He reminds them that under an isolation decree, their absolute duty is to return home and lock the gates, warning that drawing their blades on the outside will bring down the wrath of the entire martial realm. Hyunjin clenches his fists in silence, torn between ancestral honor and sect discipline, while mocking their caution. The beggar sneers that they are about to run away with their tails between their legs. The old man whispers that even with the sect locked down, there is still one way to exact their revenge, leaving the surprised warrior staring at the wanderer eager to understand his secret proposal. Hyunjin asks desperately if there is truly a path to wash away the stain on Manhwa's honor, and the beggar grins with malice, getting ready to drop his sinister suggestion on the swordsman. Meanwhile, the bank's carriage rolls through a peaceful village along the riverbanks, where a friendly vendor walks along the dirt street carrying a basket loaded with fresh fruit. The woman calls out, offering crisp apples and sweet peaches to pedestrians passing through the market, and leaning out the window, Beck waves cheerfully, calling over the attractive merchant. Checking out the goods in the basket, Beck praises the look of the apples and asks for the price, making the seller giggle at the compliment as the man charms her with flattering words. Snagging a free fruit as a bonus, the driver thanks the lovely vendor for her kindness, and stepping back inside the carriage he sifts through the basket while the assistant naps on the bench. Carefully digging around, the man pulls out a confidential slip hidden between the apples, letting out a thoughtful sigh the second he finishes reading the secret note. He warns that the drunken beggar slipped into the Marine Alliance and might have spilled everything, but Kim shoots down the idea, stating that the old man's greed would never let him share the glory. The manager explains that the elder will simply use the mountain masters as his personal hunting dogs, and asked about the clan lockdown. The collector guarantees the swordsmen are definitely coming to kill them. The young boss reveals that the beggar almost certainly played his final trump card, a desperate gambit consisting of tricking those masters into declaring their own self-expulsion. In his memories, the old wanderer proposed that the squad renounce the clan to salvage their honor, and Master Hyunjin listened to that insane idea with wide, astonished eyes. Tearing the sect emblem from their chests would allow them to pursue vengeance as rogue warriors, though Junior Cheongryong found the entire suggestion an unforgivable insult to their traditions. Mocking their hesitation, the beggar told the cowards to crawl right back to their mountain, taunting them to forget their warrior pride and rot in pure shame for the next 10 years. Overwhelmed by anguish, Hyunjin felt the crushing weight of humiliation choke his heart. and gripping the emblem on his robes, the veteran made a reckless, desperate choice. Pure fury and bitter madness completely took over the swordsman's eyes, while back in the carriage, Beck takes a bite of his apple, reflecting on the cruelty of such a choice. He doubts anyone would have the guts to sever ties with the clan they spent their entire life serving, but staring out the window, Kim remains dead silent for a few seconds. The manager states with total confidence that those prideful warriors will not hesitate for a second. Just as in a flash of raw hatred, Hyunjin's hand ripped into the fabric of his robes. Violently tearing off the sacred embroidery, he threw his lifelong honor away for bloody vengeance. With our collector noting that Manhwa's pride has always operated on that exact brand of blindness. That reckless fanaticism was precisely what the old beggar intended to exploit from day one, and a wicked smirk spread across the elder's face upon seeing his scheme reach completion. Back in the pavilion, Hyunjin demanded the exact location of the intruders who broke his mountain, his eyes burning with murderous intent as he swore to sever the head of whoever shamed his sect. The setting sun coats the rooftops and towering walls of the colossal city of Xiangzhou in gold. An immense commercial trading hub reached after several days of non-stop travel. Along the banks of the Yellow River, barges loaded with silk and exotic spices docked day and night, with glowing lanterns everywhere earning the bustling metropolis the title of the city that never sleeps. Spotting the bright city lights, Macri Haywell wakes up hyped by the gorgeous horizon, fascinated and celebrating that she finally gets to see where the Continental Bank headquarters is located. Up on a high cliffside, Baker's Sect scouts watch the carriage roll forward along the path, with the squad captain complaining about how painfully slow the vehicle is crawling down the dirt road. Approaching from behind, Beggar Chui lets out a mocking little chuckle, explaining that the sheer weight of the gold inside is the real reason for that sluggish pace. Saluting the master, the captain spots three mysterious hooded figures standing in the rear, wondering about the trio, and questioning if those could be the legendary white plum blossoms. In his head, he finds it odd to see only 3 men instead of the 5 warriors he expected. While beneath their wide straw hats, the strangers flash sinister grins and chilling glares. A shiver runs straight through the captain's body upon sensing the newcomer's aura, realizing that this foul, violent energy definitely does not belong to Manhwa swordsmen. Shaking, the scout asks who these dangerous monsters brought along by the elder actually are, but the old beggar simply replies that he has maintained one strict habit since his youth. Stepping to the edge of the cliff, he glares down at the approaching carriage, boasting that his greatest strength has always been extreme caution in every single move he makes. It was precisely that paranoia that kept him alive through decades of bloody martial conflicts, and a sinister glint flashes in his eyes as he prepares to trigger the final ambush. With total calm, the veteran decides to unleash his hunting dogs to corner their prey. Down on the dirt road, the bank's carriage continues rolling along smoothly, until a heavy wave of raw killing intent slices through the air, slamming into the cabin. Goosebumps breaking out across his skin, Bake instantly clocks the deadly threat closing in from behind, glancing over at his boss, who casually nods to confirm he is already aware of the ambush. Bake warns that the old beggar brought in outside mercenaries to aid his hunt, but shutting his eyes, Kim notes that a greedy man never shares a feast with his peers. Pushing the wooden door open, the young manager stands up, ready to disembark, dryly remarking that there will not be enough chairs for everyone back at headquarters anyway. Hopping down from the vehicle, both men plant their boots firmly into the dirt road, as the boss instructs Makri Wa to keep riding ahead while they stay behind to handle the trash. Startled, the young woman asks what is going on and volunteers to fight by their side, but Kim shoots her down, saying hosting guests is adult work and he never puts company assets in danger. The girl is left speechless upon hearing the word assets used to describe her once again, flashbacks reminding her of how he shielded her body from the collapsing roof with his own flesh. She fondly remembers how her boss has always prioritized her physical safety above everything, making it obvious that his blunt, business talk is just his awkward way of showing he cares. Still, the assistant finds it weird that an overpowered monster like him would even use the word danger. While outside, Beck yells for the rookie to head over and get some rest at the branch office, giving her a cheeky wink while promising that a massive surprise awaits her at the front door. Curious, the girl tries to puzzle out the secret as the carriage begins picking up speed, while Kim taps the wood, commanding the driver to book it straight toward the city. Leaning out the window, the girl screams her manager's name, deeply worried about the incoming clash, but waving his hand dismissively, the young man promises to meet up with her later at headquarters. The carriage speeds away down the dusty trail beneath the amber glow of sunset, with Beck noting the girl looked anxious, though Kim reminds him the carriage must serve as live bait. The master spy agrees, knowing full well the greedy beggar will chase after the gold first. before turning around to lock in on the separate threat already marching up their rear. Heavy, disciplined footsteps stomp across the dirt, signaling the arrival of new challengers. And, flashing a sharp grin, Kim announces that it is time to welcome the prodigal sons home. A squad of warriors with torn robes and drawn blades steps into the middle of the road, while our debt collector scoffs, teasing that he was worried he would have to track them down himself. Drawing his sword, Hyunjin roars, threatening to rip the kid's tongue out before taking his head. But laughing sarcastically, Kim acts all terrified by the swordsman's explosive rage. The manager taunts him, reminding the rogue master that Manhwa is supposed to be locked up tight, mocking that running around threatening innocent folks looks pretty awful for a righteous sect. A dark shadow of pure fury clouds Hyunjin's vision at that insolent mockery, screaming that the debt collector is the sole villain who forced their mountain into lockdown. Despite being a seasoned master, the man completely loses his composure over the kid's mockery. As the surrounding swordsmen lock into aggressive combat stances with bloodthirsty intent, the rogue leader barks that he will worry about the sex punishment only after he guts this brat, with a burning thirst for vengeance completely swallowing the honor and sanity of the White Division warriors. A blazing violet flare of concentrated internal chi erupts around the Manhwa masters, and catching the floral scent in the air, Bake instantly recognizes the feared violet mist divine art. The master spy is genuinely impressed watching the true strength of the white plum blossoms up close. Yet facing all that suffocating pressure, Kim simply smiles under the sunset without a shred of fear. Gripping his scabbard, Kim praises their guts, remarking that this is how true martial artists ought to behave, before drawing the sacred steel, declaring that his absolute resolve will remain unshakable. That blade was bestowed upon Mount Hua 30 years ago as a royal reward for aiding the imperial court. And watching his boss from the side, Baek Il-myung swallows hard, realizing the sheer weight of this moment. In his mind, the master spy acknowledges the boundless, terrifying audacity of this debt collector, realizing that this monster genuinely intends to collect debts from the entire martial realm. The legendary white plum blossoms now stand assembled before him on the battlefield, and alongside the possession of the yellow dragon sword, every single piece of the puzzle clicks into place. Kim's true reasons for targeting Mount Hua in the first place are finally revealed in their entirety.